Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Let me apologize for being late. I had a little problem connecting with YouTube. It's crazy out there. It's crazy everywhere. Welcome to this, episode number 365 of Robservations, a show about something. I am, of course, your host, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your master of fun and wonder, your sci-fi sommelier, your archduke of Banterbury. I don't know why I keep saying that. I like that one. It's probably a little in the weeds. Your existential Mr. Rogers, Robert Meyer Burnett, and I'm overjoyed to be out here robcasting at you imagination connoisseurs, you members of the Post-Geek Singularity community. And I'll tell you, it might be silly, but I like robcasting from the Robservatory. It makes me feel good. I'm socially distanced from everyone. I have all of the things that I like surrounding me, which is terrific. As you know, I'm working on the special features for the Hills Run Red Blu-ray for Scream Factory, which is due to come out in June, as far as I know. That's what it's going to happen. I turned in a piece on William Sadler, an interview piece, and one of the cool things about these interview pieces that I'm doing, they're interviews, but they're also behind the scenes, and it's a 20-minute piece just on Bill Sadler. Very excited about it. I've done that with all the main cast. Sophie Monk's going to be happy we brought this movie back. She loves it so much. But it's great that we're being able to do this. Me and director Dave Parker and I are doing this together. His pieces are looking back from today's perspective, and my pieces are footage that I was creating back 12 years ago. We shot the movie in the summer, in June mostly, of 2008, just before the subprime mortgage crisis destroyed the entertainment industry. So, wow, it's almost like I'm looking back in time from a perspective where the entertainment business, is also being wrecked on a day-by-day basis. Crazy times. Hey, we all might be getting checks if you live in America for $2,000, $1,000 twice a month, or two months in a row. Craziness. Anyway, so I have to tell you, first of all, it's getting increasingly more difficult to find topics to discuss on this show. The only thing that's going to save me, that's going to keep me going, is you. You imagination connoisseurs, you have not let me down. I keep getting sent. By the way, I'm not sick. A touch of the cold, maybe. But if there were tests, I would go get one. But no, I'm feeling very good. But I will say your letters are keeping me going. I have a bumper crop of letters today, and if you've ever seen Never Let Me Go, you know what a bumper crop means. A great bunch of letters. I want to thank you all in advance for the support on the show. Look, while I appreciate tips and super chats, and that's always good, that always keeps me going, of course, having your letters to read is the thing that people most respond to, having that fan interaction. And I have got some doozies today, including an off-topic letter from Willow Yang, the great Willow. If you haven't gone to the Burnettwork.net website and read her former letters or her past letters of Willow Talk, they're worth reading. But this is one that's specifically about the COVID-19 virus, and as we all know, Willow Yang is getting her PhD in microbiology. So I've often said Willow Yang is the E.F. Hutton of this channel. When Willow writes, we listen. This is a particularly interesting letter, and I think she very cogently, not covidly, maybe you could say she very covidly? No, she cogently states, I'll get to it. But boy, did something come up today that I was like, oh, wow, I got to talk about this. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, as everyone knows, one of my favorite places to go in the morning, or actually every day, is Garth Franklin's great aggregate site, Dark Horizons, darkhorizons.com. I've met Garth Franklin a few times. I think he's a great guy. And he has been doing, it's a news site. You know, it's a news site that brings together all the information that you imagination connoisseurs want to know. By the way, I'm not on his payroll. Like with most things that I just tout on this show, it's just because I like him and I love his site. And there's an aggregate of all the pertinent entertainment news stories that you imagination connoisseurs should be abreast of. And boy, how could I resist this headline? Johnson wishes for Last Jedi testing. Now, I had to click on that. Now, first of all, before I get into what I'm going to say, I am a huge Rian Johnson fan. I've been a Rian Johnson fan since I saw Brick for the very first time, and Brick knocked me out. Brick is a story set in, well, it's high school age kids, but yet it's told like a film noir. And I thought the concept was really clever and interesting and really unique. I thought it was really well executed. I liked the acting. And I have liked Rian Johnson's other work, like Brothers Bloom. I really liked Knives Out. And I loved his episodes of Breaking Bad, especially the episode The Fly, which everybody remembers from Breaking Bad. In my mind, Rian Johnson is a world-class filmmaker. And I'll tell you something. I like Knives Out, for instance. If you still collect physical media, the Knives Out Blu-ray is tremendous. Not only is the movie a lot of fun and beautifully made, and my God, does it look gorgeous. But and look, you can make a movie that's a global hit set in a house. You know, he's shown that you can make. I mean, obviously, he has a cast of incredible movie stars, all that all brought something. He started a new franchise with Daniel Craig's character. I'm a huge fan of Rian Johnson's. All of my problems with the new Star Wars trilogy, the sequel trilogy as we now call it, began in The Force Awakens. I really hated The Force Awakens because I thought when you go, as you've always heard me talk about, when you go from the end of Return of the Jedi, which I told you was very disappointing to me when I first saw it, having seen Empire Strikes Back in the theater 26 times, and I thought Jedi was a real step down. It was kidified, and they were clearly selling toys back then. I mean, look, I'll admit, Return of the Jedi made me excited to get a Weequay toy. Okay, I wanted to get a figure of Weequay. I get it. I bought it. I had it. But Jedi is a disappointment. However, there are great moments in Jedi, especially the confrontation between Luke, Vader, and the Emperor makes that movie all worthwhile. And I do like the rescue of Solo from Jabba the Hutt and the space battle at the end. Everything in between doesn't really work for me. But anyway, I thought that the Star Wars sequel trilogy, J.J. Abrams, in my mind, I understand why they did it. Corporate mandate, reboot the franchise, all that. I thought none of it made any sense at all. How does the galaxy go from the end of Return of the Jedi to right back where it started from? I thought it was a huge mistake not to have a final mission with Luke, Han, Leia, Chewie, R2-3PO, Lando, and within that mission you introduce our new characters and then you pass the torch. But everything that happened, they basically just reset the galaxy to where you were in Return of the Jedi, which in my mind didn't make any sense. So remember, what happens to Luke was set up in Force Awakens. I mean, the way Luke was treated. So Rian Johnson was passed a baton, and he ran with it. Now, I have to say, I think probably looking back on all three of the sequel movies, that The Last Jedi, in my mind, is the most interesting one as a film. Now, I know people are going to say, what? Again, Rian Johnson played the hand he was dealt. I think The Last Jedi is a beautifully made movie. But before I get to my objections to it, this is a really interesting I'll just read it. So this is what was on Dark Horizons today. The conversation surrounding Rian Johnson's Star Wars The Last Jedi probably won't end in my lifetime, considering how it has gone in the more than 2 years since its release. The most contentious film of the whole Skywalker saga, the movie still has fans on either side arguing over its merits and faults. Recently, though, Rian Johnson revealed he wished he could have done things differently with the film in one aspect. As part of the special features for the home video release of his most recent film, Knives Out, which, by the way, has an incredible documentary produced by my boy Cliff Stevenson from Off the Cliff Productions, Cliff Stevenson has kind of filled in where a lot of other DVD producers, like myself, even though I'm working on one now, and especially Charlie de Lauzirika, who I've always considered to be held him in the highest. Charlie de Lauzirika and Michael Pellerin, who produced Lord of the Rings, who I used to work for, kind of set the gold standard, but those kinds of things are not being done very much. Knives Out has something that is very much worth your time, and I highly recommend. I think you can get it with a digital download too. But anyway, As part of the special features for the home video release of the most recent film Knives Out, and discovered by the guys at Screen Rant, Rian Johnson revealed that he wished he could have had some test screenings to help him craft The Last Jedi, as they went so well with Knives Out. Rian Johnson says, quote, "Knives Out was like a party in the theater. It was really fun. It was like the first time I was like, oh wow, this actually plays. This is good," which is really nice. And that's something on Star Wars you can't do. You can't test Star Wars movies for a lot of different reasons. I've always hated test screening, and when we were making Star Wars, at a certain point in the process, you're like, God, I would give my left arm to put this in front of 300 people in Burbank just to see how it plays. Lucasfilm is famously so concerned about spoilers that they don't show Star Wars films early. Even key cast and crew don't see the whole thing until right near the end. Would it have made a difference with The Last Jedi? Let the speculation begin. So here's the thing, as many of you know, obviously I've made films in my lifetime. I just recently finished producing and editing Tango Shalom. One of the most valuable things that you can do as a filmmaker, assuming you've already made a movie, is you have to show it to an audience. You've not made your film so you can sit at home by yourself and watch it. You've made a movie for an audience. And ultimately, an audience will judge whether or not that movie is good. So it makes sense that you would play movies in front of audiences as you are developing them. And I think, by the way, it is crucial. I was telling my producers this when I work with Dan Bates and Mark Altman and Mark Gottwald and Alan Kaufman making Free Enterprise. I said, look, we need to show this movie to see if the jokes play, and we'll probably have to screen it 3 or 4 times. That's what I told them. And we did. We screened various iterations of the movie, and I think it was really important to do just that, because you don't know how it plays. And it's not just that you're so close to it. I'll tell you something. What actually, in a way, you kind of are, but there's nothing better. I mean, I edit movies in a space. I have 3 monitors right here, and when I'm cutting a movie, even when Gabe Bologna, the director of Tango Shalom, we sat in a room, we're cutting it together. The way you see your movie on these screens is very different from seeing your movie up on a big screen. So we had a screening a year ago of Tango Shalom, where we invited people that hadn't seen the movie, hadn't told anybody about it. It was a longer cut of the movie than it is now. And I was able, for the first time, as the producer, but mostly as the editor of the film, to actually stand at the back of the theater and watch it on a big screen. The lessons that you learn, the things that you see, I see edits I want to change. I see all kinds of things that the only way that it's possible to see those things is to view it literally in a different form. You know, you're looking at something like this on a screen in front of me, a 30-inch screen. When you're seeing something on a 20-foot screen, it becomes a very different experience. And you have the added benefit of seeing it with an audience. And I'll tell you something. I've said this before on this show. That's why I love the movie-going experience. You can feel, I know this is weird. I'm not going all Marianne Williamson or Shirley MacLaine or whatever. But you can feel if an audience is with you or against you while you watch a movie. If you're a filmmaker, you wait, you sit, you're almost like cringing while you're waiting for the jokes to land, to see if they land. And sometimes, as in the case of Tango Shalom, people laugh at things I didn't even know were funny. I mean, believe it or not, there are certain character traits that I've liked, or Gabe, the director, liked, and we knew it was good, because for us, I'm like, oh, that's a great moment. Let's keep that moment. But there were times when the audience would laugh, and I wouldn't even know, I'm like, oh my God. And then there were times when the audience didn't laugh at things we thought were hilarious. So it's really important to screen a movie. And I'll tell you something. You learn things about structure. There was a situation, there were two instances in Tango Shalom that I won't tell you what they were, but there was a secondary character, a minor character that just didn't belong in the movie. In fact, the scene with that character actually distracted or changed the way our lead actress was perceived by the audience. And the audience, no one told me this, but I could tell watching the movie. It was one of those things I felt. I'm like, that scene has got to go. And it's something we cut. You think, oh, we have to have that scene. I'm like, I told the director, I said to Gabe, I'm like, this scene has got to go. With a character we actually called the douchey douche. We've been calling him douchey douche. One of the things that you learn when you edit a film, especially when you're sitting in a room with the director for months on end, there are all these private jokes. There's private jokes that happen with the footage. There's moments that you make. Everyone gets a nickname. There's all kinds of stuff. But this one character who was designed to be a dick, but we just called him, rather than the dick, we called him the douchey douche. That guy's so douchey. And these nicknames, they just arise. And it happens on every movie. Everything I've ever worked on, especially in the edit bay, you develop this shorthand about characters because, you're looking at this stuff for hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of hours. So you do it to amuse yourself more than anything. But then it becomes a shorthand. And like if someone were to come in, we're like, let's make the douchey douche do this. And people would be like, wait, what? There's a character in your movie named douchey douche? Like, no. That's a thing. But when I saw when I saw Tango Shalom projected in a theater with the full audience, I'm like, douchey douche has got to go. So, it's always a bummer when that happens. But Rian Johnson understands this. I think Rian Johnson is a world-class filmmaker. And I bet you there are things that he might have, in hindsight, after seeing how an audience responds or how it feels, there are things about Last Jedi that I think are huge missteps. And I'll say what they are. I don't like the colloquial humor. I thought that the comedy scene where could you put General Hux on, that whole thing, it really undermined the dire opening of that film. Look, Star Wars humor is great, but Star Wars humor is not forced. It's certainly not colloquial. I don't know. Do you think a princess and a guy like me? No. That's Star Wars humor. When Han Solo at the beginning or at the end of when they're in the Falcon in Star Wars, that kind of humor is universal humor. And when you're doing something colloquial, like literally it would only be funny to modern audiences, I think you undermine what you're doing. And I don't like that kind of humor. I'll bet you if he had test screened it, sure, people would have laughed about it, but I'll bet you somebody would have said to him, hey, this opening bombing run where you literally see Rose Tico's sister die and all of these people die does not need to be undercut with this kind of humor. I am willing to bet he would have seen that and taken a step back and said, we want to open this movie with a gut punch, and we don't need this kind of humor in this situation, because I felt that it was very out of place. I'll tell you something else. I have also thought about Last Jedi. Let's talk about Canto Bight. Again, I think having Rose and Finn light off in the middle of that chase sequence to Canto Bight was a mistake. I thought it really took away from the whole thing. Now, I think that storyline could have been integrated into the movie better. I will bet you that they would have come up with the idea that, maybe Rose Tico and Finn could have just already been on Canto Bight when the movie started. Because them leaving the ship to go on this mission seems silly, but if they're already there, they've been sent on a secret mission, you're dropping them in to then the going back and forth. They need to get back to help. They need to get back. There's a ticking clock that we all know about, but they left in the middle of the clock ticking. So it seems like, why are we here? What is this? It never really seemed very dire. Really, this is the time we need to go get this code breaker to do this, whatever this thing is. I mean, anyway, and they probably would have restructured or figured stuff out like that. But, I think that the test screening process, and even if you don't want to screen it I understand you don't have the ability when You're making a Star Wars movie because somebody will go spoil it online. It doesn't matter if they signed an NDA or not. Star Wars is one of those things that more so than any other film franchise, it doesn't matter what it is, Star Wars is the one that people are, well, maybe I should say the Avengers, Infinity War and Endgame or something like that. But not every Marvel movie, people aren't necessarily waiting. Like Black Widow is something I really want to see, but like I'm not clamoring for spoilers. But with Star Wars, it's different. So I don't know how you would test screen a Star Wars movie in this day and age, because somebody is going to go onto Reddit or 4chan or where the hell they're going to go, and they will have, they'll be typing on to their account as soon as, if they're leaving the theater, they'll be spoiling the film. So I don't know how you can do that. But knowing that and hearing that sense of regret, there's a lot of scenes in The Last Jedi that I think are really great. Of course, do I like the way Luke was treated? No. But that was something that, remember, Rian Johnson, that was one of those, that was in the deck he was dealt, man. He was given that card of Luke being a hermit. It's like, yeah, you could have had him fly away, but that's what you were given. Why was he there? And once you have accepted that, which he had to accept, you have to take that situation and make something of it. And I think he did a really good job. Like, did I like seeing Luke Skywalker that way? No. Would I have done that? No. I would have done a movie, first of all, where you saw Han, Luke, Leia, Chewie, R2, 3PO, and go on a kick-ass Star Wars adventure, and you would have seen the rise of the First Order and whatever. But that's water under the bridge. It doesn't matter. That's an alternate universe, whatever happens. But I liked what happened in The Last Jedi, given what we were given with Force Awakens. I like the Snoke. Look, did I think Snoke should die like that? No. I understand that Rian Johnson was trying to subvert expectations, but he was given what he was given, so he tried to do what he could with it. I still think the movie is beautifully made, beautifully photographed. It's really a stunning movie to look at. But I'll bet, and as I read these comments from him, a filmmaker that I respect, a filmmaker that bounced back from Last Jedi and was able to make the lovely, wonderful Knives Out, turned it into a new franchise. He deserved the success that the film has had. But when I was reading his comments, man, I'm thinking, yeah, Disney, everybody, they need to, you cannot make a movie and not screen it for regular audiences. And I don't mean, a lot of the time, like Bryan Singer, when I was working on his documentaries, he would show the movies to what he would call friends and family. Based on a friends and family screening, Superman Returns became a very different movie, which I think was a mistake. I think that the movie that I originally saw, the first movie they screened, was a better version of that film. It was also a half an hour longer. But a lot of the younger members of the audience didn't understand, seeing the smashed Krypton, what that was, because they didn't know the Richard Donner Superman. So seeing the cracked dome and the return to Krypton sequence, there was almost no dialogue for the first 20 minutes of Superman Returns. So they made some substantial changes. Kal Penn's character doesn't even speak in the final version of Superman Returns, but he certainly was a character in the version that I saw, which ran almost 3 hours. That was the film that was finished. But, I do think that you've got to show movies to an audience. You have to know. Filmmakers have to know. And it can only lead to, now this is not, I'm not saying you're going to make wholesale changes to a movie, but it does help you as a filmmaker. Astute filmmakers that really know what they're doing are able to work accordingly. They're not going to go destroy their film because of a test screening. Executives might. The power should still, I've always believed in trusting filmmakers. When you have a $200,000 or $200 million investment, I understand that the studios can get involved. If you have a disastrous test screening, I understand that. That's a different thing. But assuming your movie is still good, there's nothing more helpful to a filmmaker than watching your movie in front of an audience. That's all I wanted to say. And, that Rian Johnson's thinking this because, of course, every experience that you have, you learn about something. But it was so pleasing to me to see that the man who made Brick was able to bounce back and make Knives Out even after what happened with The Last Jedi and what still is going on with The Last Jedi. I mean, has there ever been a movie ever in the history of mankind that has kept the debate going for as long as The Last Jedi has? That's got to count for something, doesn't it? Maybe. Who knows? Now, this is something very different. I gotta put my glasses on to read this one. This is something that I wasn't even going to read, but right before I went on, I found this article, and I wanted to share it with you. Well, you can't really... Let's see if I can screen capture it and get it up there. Can I? Can I screen capture it? Maybe I can. Let's see. Let's see if I can, because I'll read this article to you because it tickled me to no end. Let's see. Okay. Here it is. Here is this article. And this dropped on Newsweek today at 7 a.m. Inside the military's top secret plans if coronavirus cripples the government. And I saw this and I was like, wow, is this like John Frankenheimer's 7 Days in May? Like, what is this? Even as, I got to read this just because the reason I'm reading this is like, I'm like, this is like a movie. This is awesome. It's like an X-Files episode with FEMA and all this. So I'll read it. Even as President Trump says he tested negative for coronavirus, the COVID-19 pandemic raises the fear that huge swaths of the executive branch or even Congress and the Supreme Court could also be disabled, forcing the implementation of continuity of government plans that include evacuating Washington and devolving leadership to second-tier officials in remote and quarantined locations. But coronavirus is also new territory where the military itself is vulnerable and the disaster scenarios being contemplated, including the possibility of widespread domestic violence as a result of food shortages, I was like, wow, are forcing planners to look at what are called extraordinary circumstances. Above top secret contingency plans already exist for what the military is supposed to do if all the constitutional successors are incapacitated. Standby orders were issued more than 3 weeks ago to ready these plans, not just to protect Washington, but also to prepare for the possibility of some form of martial law. According to new documents and interviews with military experts, the various plans, codenamed Octagon, Freejack, and Zodiac, I mean, those are all names of movies. The Octagon are the underground laws to ensure government continuity. They are so secret that under these extraordinary plans, devolution could circumvent the normal constitutional provisions for government succession, and military commanders could be placed in control around America. I mean, this is like, these plans are they were talked about. This is a straight up military coup. I mean, of course, our government's falling apart at the time, but straight up. We're in new territory, says one senior official. The entire post-9/11 paradigm of emergency planning thrown out the window. The officer jokes, in the kind of morbid humor characteristic of this slow-moving disaster, that America had better learn who General Terrence J. O'Shaughnessy is. He is the combatant commander for the United States and would be, in theory, in charge if Washington were eviscerated. That is, until a new civilian leader could be installed. We're in territory we've never been in before. What happens, government expert Norman Ornstein asked last week, if so many members of Congress come down with the coronavirus that the legislature cannot meet or cannot muster a quorum? After 9/11, Ornstein and others, alarmed by how little Washington had prepared for such possibilities, created a bipartisan continuity of government commission to examine precisely these and other possibilities. It has been a 2-decade-long futile effort, Ornstein says, with Congress uninterested or unable to either pass new laws or create working procedures that would allow emergency and remote operations. The rest of the federal government equally is unprepared to operate if a pandemic were to hit the very people called upon to lead in an emergency. That is why, for the first time, other than planning for the aftermath of a nuclear war, extraordinary measures are being contemplated. In the past, almost every imagined contingency associated with emergency preparedness has assumed civil and military assistance coming from the outside. One military officer involved in continuity planning calls it a cavalry mentality, that military assistance is requested or ordered after local civil authority has been exhausted. There might not be an outside, the officer says, asking that she not be named because she is speaking about sensitive matters. In recognition of the equal vulnerability of military forces, the Pentagon has instituted unprecedented restrictions on off-base travel. Last Wednesday, it restricted most overseas travel for 60 days, and then on Friday issued supplemental domestic guidance that essentially keeps all uninformed personnel on or near military bases. There are exceptions, including travel that is mission essential, the Pentagon says. Mission essential in this regard applies to the maze of more than a dozen different secret assignments, most of them falling under three larger contingency plans. Con Plan 3400, or the military's plan for homeland defense, if America itself is a battlefield. Con Plan 3500, defense support of civil authorities, where the military assists in an emergency short of armed attack on the nation. Con Plan 3600, military operations in the national capital region and continuation of government, under which the most secret plans to support continuity are nested. All of these plans are the responsibility of the U.S. Northern Command, or NORTHCOM, the Homeland Defense Military Authority created after 9/11. Air Force General O'Shaughnessy is NORTHCOM's Colorado Springs-based commander. On February 1st, Defense Secretary Mark T. Esper signed orders directing NORTHCOM to execute nationwide pandemic plans. Secretly, he signed warning orders, the Warnord, it's called, alerting NORTHCOM and a host of East Coast units to prepare to deploy in support of potentially extraordinary missions. 7 secret plans, some highly compartmented, exist to prepare for these extraordinary missions. 3 are transportation related, just to move and support the White House and the federal government as it evacuates and operates from alternative sites. The first is called the Rescue and Evacuation of the Occupants of the Executive Mansion, or RISEM plan, responsible for protecting Donald Trump, Vice President Mike Pence, and their families, whether that means moving them at the direction of the Secret Service or, in a catastrophe, digging them out of the rubble of the White House. The second is called the Joint Emergency Evacuation Plan, or JEEP, and it organizes transportation for the Secretary of Defense and other national security leaders so that they can leave the Washington area. Wow. The Atlas Plan is the third, moving non-military leaders, congressional leadership, the Supreme Court, and other important figures to their emergency relocation sites. Under Atlas, a still-secret bunker would be activated and cordoned, with government operations shifting to Maryland. Well, anyway, this article, as you can see, goes on and on and on. And I was reading this article. To me, it was like catnip. I'm like, man, this is like designated survivor stuff. And I was reading this going, I hope this becomes fodder for movies and TV shows. And who knew about all this? I didn't until I read this article, but it's fascinating reading. I would put it into the chat, but I can't see the chat because of weird YouTube stuff. So I can't see what's going on. I assume that with the amount of people here that you can hear me, though. But I thought this was crazy. You know, they haven't necessarily been really reporting on this, but I thought that this is great. It's like an extended period of devolution. It just goes on. I mean, devolution. It's continuity of government and protection of the presidency began in the Eisenhower administration, with the possibility emerging that Washington could be obliterated in an atomic attack. The need to plan for nuclear decision-maker to survive, even a direct attack, led to the building of bunkers and a maze of secret procedures and exceptions, many of which are still followed to this day. Congress was also folded in, at least congressional leadership, to ensure that there would always be a constitutional successor. And then the Supreme Court was added. I mean, all of this stuff is incredible. And it goes on to say The terrorist attack scenario dominated until 2006, when the disastrous government response to Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans shifted federal government preparedness to formally adopt an all-hazard system. Civil agencies, the 50 states and local communities, particularly large cities, all began to synchronize emergency preparedness with common protocols. U.S. Northern Command was created to harness military assistance in domestic disasters. Its 3 overarching contingency plans, the product now of 15 years of trial and error. I mean, this article's dope, and I would say it's on Newsweek today, and it was published at 7 a.m. this morning, and it's just, the title of the article is, if you want to read it, Exclusive: Inside the Military's Top Secret Plans If Coronavirus Cripples the Government. In a world where one government is all that... I mean, this is just... I thought it was dope. I thought it was pretty cool. And this stuff's right up my alley. I love this kind of thing. And I didn't even know anything about this. I don't know if many Americans do. But it certainly was interesting, damn it. I found it incredibly interesting. And I hope you guys do too. I'm just sorry I could not read the whole article because it's really long, or share it with you. But now you know where to go if you want to get it. So I'm going to go back to Andy Mays. He sent in a tip and said, "Hey, Rob, curious if you've ever heard of the time travel movie Primer. Very, very interesting and can be confusing, but that's part of its charm. Also a very famous low-budget movie from what I read. Love your work, buddy. Get ready to see more of my name." Well, Andy Mays, I look forward to seeing more of your name. Hopefully you're going to become, do you play sports like Willie? Or are you going to make movies? Whatever you choose to do, I can't wait to hear more of your name. But thanks for supporting the channel. And let me tell you, I love Primer. Primer is a terrific movie. And Shane Carruth made Primer. And they made it for like 30 grand. I have to tell you, Primer was only the second movie in my life. There have been 3, actually. 3 movies in my life that I watched back to back for the very first time. A Clockwork Orange was the first. When I watched A Clockwork Orange, I'd heard about it, and I couldn't. I was so blown away by Clockwork Orange, I immediately rewound the tape and watched it again till like 2 in the morning or something. Primer was the second. Now, Primer, I want to say, if memory serves, I believe I was in New Zealand. I want to say I was working on, well, let me find out, since you're asking about Primer. Primer release date. October 8th, 2004. Okay, that means it was released October 8th, 2004, so 2005, I was in Australia. That's right. Now that I think about it, I was in Australia. I'm working on Superman Returns when I had the disc. I had the DVD of Primer, and I watched it twice. And it is a mind-boggling time travel movie that is it's completely low budget. It has no bells and whistles, but it is a movie, like you said, it's fascinating. I love it. It deals with time travel in a very, very unique way. And if you've never seen Primer before, please watch it because it is terrific. And it is a mind bender. I had to stop, and I even think I took notes. Like, I'm like, okay, is this right or is that right? Or I did. It was crazy, crazy to watch. But I really, really like it. Good choice. I'm glad you came across it. But I love Primer. And if you like Primer, I mean, it's totally different, but watch Shane Carruth's follow-up, Upstream Color, and report back on that. Tell me what you think. Willow sent in a tip, and she says, "Unfortunately, I can't catch any of your whining about movies live, but I hope that you and Elizabeth have a good time discussing Donnie Darko. What's your favorite Jake Gyllenhaal performance? Mine is probably Nightcrawler." Well, I think as far as a performance, Jake Gyllenhaal's amazing. He's amazing in Nightcrawler. So good. But you know what? There's a movie he made called October Sky. And if you've never seen October Sky, he's very young in that. But it's about model rockets. It's a wonderful movie. I mean, it's not just about model rockets, but life in a small town and dreams of space and model rockets. That's definitely one of my favorite. It's like the first time I remember noticing him, but yeah, October Sky. But I would probably say Nightcrawler is probably the best thing he's done. Although he's been doing a lot of really interesting stuff lately. So, Carlos Fontes sent in a super chat and said, how would you feel about an action movie taking place in the 40s featuring Indiana Jones, Captain America, and the Rocketeer fighting Nazis? Come on, dude. That's like orgasmic. Who wouldn't want that? I would love to see that. You know, it could be like the Defenders. I mean, I would love to see Marvel... Excuse me. I'd love to see Marvel do that. You know, make a Defenders movie. Or the Invaders. Do a World War II... I mean, they kind of did with you saw that in First Avenger, but I would, I don't know if they could ever make that deal, but it would be pretty cool. I would definitely go see that movie. Sam O'Neill sent in a super chat and says, when I think of Hollywood, I think of Entourage and Ari Gold screaming in his phone constantly. Does this have some slight truth? It does. There is a little bit of that, but I have to say that I've always, again, this is in my own mind. There, to me, are two Hollywoods, and I've worked in both. One is the side of Hollywood that actually makes movies. Let's just call it production. And then there is the Hollywood that decides what movies are going to be made and who's going to be in them and all of that. That is another. It's like they're two separate nation states. It's like how I told you I worked in feature production at Warner Brothers. And feature production at Warner Brothers did not really have much to do with the movies that were actually greenlit by the studio. Feature production was certainly consulted. But when you went over to the people, the real power players in Hollywood are those people that can greenlight what movies get made. And the greenlighting process serves a whole different side of the industry. Agents, managers, all of that is very, very different from the side that I've pretty much lived on since the beginning of my career, which is production. As everyone knows, I've told you, my first job in the industry I was the art department production assistant on Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, written, of course, by my buddy Dave Scow, who wrote The Hills Run Red, that I produced, which is the movie that I'm making the special features for now. But that side of the industry, the yelling and the screaming and all of that is definitely on the agent, manager, studio creative executive side, and it's a very different way of working. And it's totally different. And that's where careers are made and broken. And once the movies that are going to be made have been decided, it's like those packages then get handed off to production to actually make. Now, a lot of the time, there are people that do, in fact, exist on both sides. I mean, there's producers that definitely do. But if you want to see, there's a movie, I think Barry Levinson directed it, that stars Robert De Niro, called What Just Happened. Now, it's a low-budget movie, and let's see. It's based on Art Linson's book, I think. Let's see, when did it come out? Let me just get this correct. It's a 2008 movie. It came out in 2008, directed by Barry Levinson. Check out this cast: Robert De Niro, John Turturro, Stanley Tucci, Sean Penn. I mean, this movie, this movie just, every time I watch it, and I like to watch it a lot. I mean, it's Robin Wright, Kristen Stewart, Michael Wincott. Any movie that has Michael Wincott in it, you got to watch. You have to watch Michael Wincott. I mean, this movie it just hits close to home, and it has a lot to say about Hollywood. That's very, very true. But it's based on Art Linson's book. It's a fictionalized version of what happens. Bruce Willis is in the movie playing himself. My God, that Bruce Willis plays himself in this movie. Watch What Just Happened. It's very, very true. So check it out. But yeah, so that's people do. When you're in production, I have heard producers scream on phones and yell at people, but it's not usually done. It's not that productive. Not when you're in production, but there's a lot of crazy people. There is something about Hollywood. Look, the nature of the business, the idea that you can get famous and you're rich and you're hobnobbing with movie stars and all of that is a very intoxicating thing. The people that I know, most of my friends that work in the industry are more on the production side, even the writers. So I know more people that actually make movies than people who, and perhaps this has always been a failing of mine. I have so little. I don't have very many friends, or I mean, at one point I probably could have, and I worked at both CAA and William Morris, two of the biggest agencies, as a reader. I was a reader at both CAA, the Creative Artists Agency, and William Morris, but I didn't. Beyond that, I did not make friends at agencies. I don't know many agents, so that was probably something that was a big oversight in my own career. Was I like to make things, so. Going to meetings with creative executives and all that was never something I was really interested in, because to me it was always kind of a waste, because I was meeting with people that didn't know how to make films. You know, it's really interesting. You'd think that this wouldn't be the case, but there's very little knowledge on the non-production side of Hollywood, the agents, the managers, about how movies and television are actually made on a day-to-day basis. It really, and it's not necessarily, I guess, surprising, because when you're trying to get your clients jobs, you're trying to get your actors booked, you don't need to know what happens once they get the job. So, and they've tried, like, agencies. One of the big problems with the Writers Guild, you'll remember that writers fired last year. Was it last year? They were firing their agents, or 2 years ago, because the agencies were trying to hone in on their clients' action with packaging. They would get packaging bonuses and all that, and they were making more money than their own clients off their clients' work. Then it was crazy. But also the agencies, everybody would love to hone in and produce content. They really would. But I've seen more yelling and screaming on that side, although I've seen producers yell and scream, but not usually during production, unless there's some calamity. Because a good producer isn't yelling and screaming during production. There's too much going on. But I've seen it. I've seen it happen. Anyway, so there is slight truth there. Sam O'Neill sends in a tip and says, that fucking General Hux scene grinded my gears. Couldn't agree with you more about Star Wars humor. Also, keep up the great work, Rob. You bloody ripper. Bloody ripper. Well, thank you, Sam. I appreciate that. Let's see. 200 Watt Studio sends in a super chat and said, that's BS. Johnson did not get handed a crap Luke. He made him crap on his own. Stop making excuses for Johnson. I'm not making excuses for Johnson, but I'm just saying that if Luke has been sequestered away and on an island, you know, and you got to do something with that. I mean, I guess he could just take him off and make Luke the heroic Jedi, but you got to deal with where was Luke left at the end of that movie? Luke was standing in front of Rey at the end of Force Awakens, who was trying to hand him his lightsaber back. I mean, if he just grabbed his lightsaber and said, "Oh, let's go," I mean, you got to do something. Luke was already there. I disagree. I think I don't find what Rian Johnson did with Luke was what we all wanted to see. No, I didn't get what I wanted to see in Return of the Jedi. So I wasn't somebody that objects to see. Luke is still the hero that I watched him as a farm boy, and then he faced down Vader and the Emperor. To me, Luke's always been a hero. So that end of that story was over. And the fact that we saw Luke for 2 seconds at the end of The Force Awakens, I'm like, why would you do that? That was the most egregious thing that was done to Luke Skywalker in my mind. So, but, and again, I'm not making excuses for, I have a lot more respect for Rian Johnson as a writer-director than I do for J.J. Abrams, because J.J. Abrams repeatedly has let me down, whereas Rian Johnson has delighted me since his first movie, Brick. So, which, by the way, for those of you who might want to see it, Brick is an outstanding movie that is now on video. It's now on HD. It's on Blu-ray, thanks to, I believe, Kino. Kino Lorber put it out. Dancing Dog sends in a tip. Robert, one of my favorite films is The French Connection. Are you picking your feet in Poughkeepsie? From Gene Hackman's amazing performance as Popeye Doyle to William Friedkin's amazing tight direction, the cat and mouse game scene on the subway, and of course the car chase is groundbreaking. First of all, I am a Friedkin acolyte. I love William Friedkin. I mean, heck, man, I'll even watch The Guardian, which is a movie. Check this out. So here's a it's a little dirty. Here's the his book that he wrote, The Friedkin Connection, about all of his movies, which, by the way, I would strongly recommend that you read. He doesn't even talk about The Guardian in this book. It's like it doesn't even exist. But I don't think it's that bad. Pie whack it. Anyway, I'm a huge Friedkin fan. I love The French Connection. You know, there's a story that I find really interesting that plays into verisimilitude that I've always remembered as somebody who makes films myself. I've always thought, okay, I love this. And I think it was Owen Roizman who shot French Connection. But he basically, Gene Hackman's coming out of a bar. They're across the street shooting at the opening of this bar, and Gene Hackman's going to come out. And Friedkin would not tell the cameraman which direction he'd told Gene Hackman to turn, either left or right. So, you know, where are you going to move the camera? Because he wanted, Friedkin comes out of documentary style, and he made documentaries, and he really, one of the reasons I think that he's able to create peak verisimilitude both in French Connection and The Exorcist is because of his documentary background, and by not telling his DP which way Gene Hackman was going to turn, you get that little bit of hesitation. I mean, the funny thing about shaky cam or moving cam or camera that's not locked down is it does create that element of real life, because you know, not only does it hark back to the kind of combat, what happened in, like, during Vietnam is we saw combat photography, we saw correspondents that were even under fire when the cameras were not locked down, they were all handheld. So it started to get ingrained in our minds, viewers' minds, that handheld camera meant reality, meant what you were seeing. That's why shaky cam even exists, and we really got a taste of that Spielberg in 97 with Saving Private Ryan. I mean, that whole 97, 98. Where's Scott Mance? I saw him yesterday. Where is he, Scott? I love that Omaha Beach sequence because it has that combat photography feel, and it really has an immediacy that you hadn't seen before in a movie, in a war movie, certainly. And that's one of the main reasons. And Friedkin knew how to do stuff like that. He would use his camera that way. Another Friedkin movie that I absolutely adore, of course, you know, his 70s movies, you've got French Connection, you have The Exorcist, and you have Sorcerer. But I also dearly, dearly love his 1985 To Live and Die in L.A. Lower budget movie, one of my favorite crime thrillers. I told people on the John Campea show, I actually went to to watch Thief. I went to the American Cinematheque where Thief and To Live and Die in L.A. were the double feature. And those are two of my favorite movies of the 70s. They're both crime thrillers. If you've never seen Friedkin's To Live and Die in L.A., what a hoot that movie is. Wang Chung did the score. It's great. William Peterson in a star-making turn. He was in To Live and Die in L.A. He played a bartender in one scene in Thief, but he was in To Live and Die in L.A., and then he later went on, of course, and starred in Michael Mann's Manhunter. But if you haven't seen To Live and Die in L.A., check that out. If it's another freaking masterpiece. Dancing Dog goes on and tips again and says, speaking of The Rocketeer, my favorite old serial is the Republic Pictures King of the Rocket Man. I tell you, the special effects by the Lydecker brothers are pretty amazing. They are. I love King of the Rocket Man. Those guys went on to do special effects for Irwin Allen. They are SFX heroes. They are. The Lydecker brothers are absolutely great special effects technicians. And I love King of the Rocket Man. It's right up there. I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's definitely up there. And King of the Rocket Man, along with The Adventures of Captain Marvel. If you want to see a really great comic adaptation, yes, Shazam. Captain Marvel, The Adventures of Captain Marvel is a great serial as well. Bob Kowal sends in a tip and says, before you string me up by my thumbs for suggesting a remake of Taxi Driver, 2 names, David Fincher directing, Jake Gyllenhaal's Travis Bickle. Subject 2, under the radar movies to have with your Quarantini, The Ninth Configuration, and Rogue Male. I love The Ninth Configuration. The Ninth Configuration was actually written and directed by William Peter Blatty, who wrote The Exorcist, or it's also known as Twinkle Twinkle Killer Kane. But the ninth configuration is terrific. It's a very heady movie, and of course, William Peter Blatty went on to write and direct Exorcist 3, which is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. Now, is it as good as The Exorcist? No, but if I could give you an analogy, if you've got Rocky, if Rocky was The Exorcist, Exorcist 3 is Creed. Does that make any sense? Perhaps it doesn't, but that's the way I kind of think about it. 200 Watt Studio sends in a super chat and says, "Do you feel the same way about Snoke? He was handed Snoke as well from JJ. Do you think killing Snoke was the best way to handle that character?" No, that's actually a fair point. I think killing Snoke was not good. I mean, I liked Snoke as a villain, and you just killed him off. But you know what? Yeah, that wasn't good. I wouldn't have done that. But it was unexpected. I mean, I understand what he was going for. I don't necessarily think that was the right thing to do. But, again, that was his movie. But, yeah. 200 Watt Studio sends another super chat and says, "To Live and Die in L.A. also has a fantastic car chase." It does. I would dare say that the car chase in To Live and Die in L.A. might even be better than the one in The French Connection. Certainly groundbreaking, but both are amazing. The To Live and Die in L.A. car chase is still, to this day, I look at it, I'm like, how did they do that? How did they do that? I don't know. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to jump into some letters here, and I have got some good ones. I'm just going to jump right into it. Sean Pullen writes a letter. "Dear Notorious RMB, I've been watching Robservations for 2 years now, as what radio callers would term..." By the way, I read Sean's letter that I went off on about Star Trek Picard yesterday, so that's who Sean is. So Sean Pullen writes in, "I've been watching Robservations for 2 years now, as what radio callers would term long-time listener, first-time caller. Except I hadn't called. In that time, you'd won me over, partly with charm and erudite discourse, but mostly with the demeanor of openness and respect. It was refreshing to tune into a YouTube channel whose host wasn't saying, 'If you like this or that thing, you're dumb, get lost.' I'm a lukewarm Discovery fan, liking some aspects of the show, frustrated with others. Your take could never be confused as lukewarm. It's red hot. You probably hate it. You've certainly spent a few Robservations eviscerating it, but strangely, I felt welcome in the Post-Geek Singularity. The ethos of your channel suggested, we may disagree, but you're welcome here. Absolutely, sir. That is absolutely true. That is the mission statement of this channel. When Picard aired, your blistering Trek commentary resumed. I was liking Picard, and I wanted to jump in and say, but what about this? What about that? But your live chats usually aired during my work day. One day, I read a tweet Jerry Ryan had liked and thought, I'm sending that to Rob. The tweet read, "The rule for hating new Star Trek is complain about everything, even if older Trek did the same thing." I decided to DM you. I never introduced myself. I didn't thank you for 2 years' content, and frankly, I didn't expect a reply. I just used the tweet as a springboard to challenge your critiques. Imagine my surprise when you not only took the time to respond, but were courteous and thoughtful. You responded despite my bad manners, and I'm sure a busy schedule. I've since super chatted a few times, but yesterday I DM'd again. Once again, asking for time outside your channel. It was a long message, but you were kind enough to read and respond to the letter on Robservations. You complimented me, addressed each point, and answered in a respectful way, even when my words could have been construed as aggressive. Thank you. I'll say it again. Thanks. Thanks for your time. Thanks for creating a community where it's okay to talk things out. So, about your responses. I noticed a theme. Allow me to quote a few statements. These are things that I said. Here's the thing. The people who are defending Picard so passionately, you're always giving me examples that aren't in Picard. You might like Picard, but you're not giving me evidence from the show itself. What you're doing is like what everyone else does that come after me. I explain exactly why I dislike Picard, and I give very specific examples. If you're going to come after me, don't come after me with what Nicholas Meyer is telling you about art. Okay, fair point. I get what you're saying. Stop telling you why you're wrong to dislike Picard and explain why I like it. That Nicholas Meyer comment was particularly stinging, laugh out loud. Damn, damn, damn. It's always harder to praise than critique. And let me just say in my defense that it's human nature, or mine at least, to want to correct. Oh, you'll see for yourself. As soon as I state what I see as a positive of the show, you'll want to jump in and explain why I'm wrong. Just as I've endeavored to debunk your critiques, you'll want to debunk my praise. Well, I wouldn't have turned into your channel or written you in the first place or tuned into your channel if I didn't value your opinion. If nothing else, it'll be entertaining reading or listening to you eviscerate me. But I have a challenge for you two. Find one damn thing that I write below with which you can agree. So here goes. What I like about Star Trek Picard. 1. Picard's hero's journey. Your protagonist can't go on a hero's journey if he's already arrived. Star Trek Picard is depicting an imperfect Picard. Some have reacted strongly against this. I get it. We want the Picard of Chain of Command, strong in the face of unrelenting adversity. We want the Picard of the Drumhead, defending an ensign against spurious charges from an admiral. We want the Picard of Insurrection, resisting the forced relocation of the Baku against the entire Federation. If need be, damn it, we want a Picard who always stands up for what's right. We want Picard the indefatigable, you know what I mean. Why can't I say that? Moral compass. Conversely, we can't imagine a Picard who would shrink from life's battles, who would abandon Romulan refugees, resign his commission, and settle on the family chateau. I'll admit, I find it hard to imagine that Picard too, but I don't reject the possibility. He wouldn't be the first good man to stumble. What we're getting, oh notorious RMB, is the Picard of family. In Family, Picard was so broken down and haunted by his experience with the Borg, he considered a position on Earth with Project Atlantis. He never capitulated. His brother Robert's tough love helped him heal, but he considered it. In Star Trek Picard, he's decades older and he has to some measure succumbed. How far are each of us from compromise and defeat? Traumatic events and significant loss can break people. The synth attack devastated Picard. Starfleet's acceptance of his resignation gutted him. He's not the young man he once was, and he's faltered. He's fallible. What good are our heroes if they aren't? Maybe what makes a hero heroic is not that he doesn't fall down, but that he picks himself back up. In any case, if Star Trek Picard depicted a perfect Picard from Episode 1, where could his character go? How could his character grow? How could we have a hero's arc? So, what's one thing I like about Picard? A vulnerable, fallible human Picard. I'm inspired by Picard himself recognizing, I haven't been living, I've been waiting to die. I'm inspired by a Picard who's picking himself up and joining the fray at 90 years old, no less. Picard is at rock bottom. He's in over his head. He no longer has the resources of the mighty Federation. Let's see where he goes. Okay, I'll respond to that first point. 1, you're not wrong. A good hero's journey is something that everybody loves. Who doesn't love a good hero's journey? The problem is, what I feel is wrong with what they're doing with Picard is they've basically just, in order to put him on that hero's journey, they've subverted everything we've ever liked about not only Picard, but Star Trek in general. They've trashed it all. All of it's gone. Because they basically were as close to a Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome Star Trek universe that we're ever going to get. And I feel that that was a mistake. You know, it would have been more interesting to me to have shown the Picard you're talking about still existing with the Federation relatively intact. You know, you need to get a 9/11 type event to get Picard to get off his ass. I just don't believe that if the Federation has gone to the shit that it's gone to in Picard, that a character like Jean-Luc Picard would ever have given up. I don't believe it. I can't, and it's not because I'm unwilling to believe it, but there has been nothing given to us other than what these new writers have told us. They've not shown us, like, there's the going got tough for Picard. There was a synth attack on the Utopia Planitia shipyards. Well, why then wouldn't Picard go organize a civilian fleet? He just quit Starfleet in the face of adversity and then went back to his chateau. I don't believe that for a minute. Now, You might, but for me, I'm asking myself, this does not compute. We have 178 episodes. If you watch the hour-long episodes of Encounter at Farpoint and All Good Things, we have 178 episodes of The Next Generation. You have 4 feature films. So let's take the 178 episodes. I don't believe there has been no indication ever given to me in any portrayal of Jean-Luc Picard that he would give up the way he gave up as depicted in Picard. I don't believe it. This is what the writers have done because it was easier to do that. It's easier to just, let's just turn everything to shit. Let's turn Picard into what? The character of Jean-Luc Picard was established over 7 years on TV, and he would never just give up. He might change his tactics. He might, but if those ships blew up, he's like, well, fuck the Romulans. That's basically what he did. You're asking me to believe that Jean-Luc Picard would just give up, let people down that trusted him to try and do something? I don't buy it. I don't buy it. And that's one of the things that your hero's journey and everything you laid out, great stuff. I like that. I just don't believe that the way that the writers went about doing that, I just don't believe it. Just like I did not believe The Force Awakens. I do not believe that after defeating the Empire that anybody would allow the First Order. I know, I've read the Aftermath books. I get it. I understand. I just don't believe it. What they did was they came up with a stupid, lazy idea because Disney mandated, and I love Disney, but Disney's like, look, we have to make our own Star Wars. We have to establish Star Wars as a new brand going forward. We don't need to deal with these middle-aged fuddy-duddies that are even more so than middle-aged. Han Solo's like 70. We're not going to, our new franchise, we're not going to focus around a bunch of retired people that have their AARP cards. I get that. I understand what Disney wanted to do. I get it. That was the mandate. Let's bring Star Wars back and retell A New Hope. It's not like Spy Who Loved Me isn't a complete remake of You Only Live Twice, and it's not like Moonraker isn't a remake of Spy Who Loved Me. I get it. I understand. But you know what? Picard, as this show shows me a Jean-Luc Picard and created a situation that the writers just fabricated without making me as a longtime viewer believe. If you had an old admiral that I'd never seen before, if this was a new show, a new Star Trek show that did not have, if you told the exact same story about what was going on, but didn't have Jean-Luc Picard as the main character, but gave us a new character, I might buy it more. But my problem with the Picard shows, I'm like, you've manufactured a bunch of bullshit that I'm supposed to believe in that I'm never going to believe in because you're asking me to believe that a character has changed because why? Because yes, in real life, people change. Okay. But we've seen elements of Picard. You go back and you watch Tapestry, where his life went on a different path. And we even see then that Picard doesn't allow that to happen. And I don't buy it. Anyway, number 2, your point number 2 is, Picard's devotion to Data. I know this is going to be a hard sell. I know because you've already questioned why Picard would help Daj and Soji. Yesterday you said, why would he? Because of his connection to a comrade who died 20 years previously? I don't buy it. We may have to disagree on this one because I absolutely do buy it. To me, it doesn't matter how many years have passed. If my brother died sacrificing his life for me 20 years ago and his daughter was in danger, I would absolutely risk my life to save her. Now, you might say that your brother Data was not related to Picard. Sure, but one of the themes of Star Trek has always been crew becoming family. Kirk, Spock, and McCoy would have died for each other. 20 years would not dim that impulse. Picard and Data were never that close, you might say, but how can we know what Picard felt for Data? Picard had no immediate family of his own during Starfleet service. In his Inner Light life, yes. In his Captain Picard life, no. In some ways, I'm sure Data was like a son or a mentee at the very least. He attended Data's violin concerts and poetry recitals. He coached him in acting on the holodeck. He defended his right to personhood. He saw Data grow in so many ways. Moreover, the entire crew faced much adversity and fought so many battles together. We know how close soldiers grow in war. How many years did Picard and Data serve together? Like Picard himself said in Broken Pieces, he believed in Data, believed in his potential, celebrated his successes, counseled him when he fell short, helped him when he needed help, and if he didn't, got out of his way. That sounds very akin to a father-son dynamic to me. Ultimately, Picard risked his life to rescue Data from the Borg and was himself saved through Data's sacrifice. So what's another thing I like about Picard? The show's depiction of Picard's consistency and devotion to Data, seen through his service to Dahj and Soji. I have absolutely loved every scene where Picard has sat down with Dahj or Soji to discuss who Data was and what it means to be an android and whether they are real or not, whether they have worth. The reverence with which Picard talks of Data, the words themselves are so evocative of who Data was and what he represented, it gives me chills. Okay, I buy into your reasoning, and I'll tell you why I still can't go with you on this. First of all we know are what Jurati and Soji and Dahj told Picard. Clearly, there's a lot more going on to it than just these girls. Like, first of all, are they like Data? We don't know as viewers. I guess they're waiting to really show us in the last 2-part episode. I mean, it's like, what are they? Are they androids, or are they flesh and blood beings that only have positronic brains? You certainly can't clone a human being from whatever the positron things are. The thing that I don't like about Star Trek Picard is immediately Picard would say, well, there's a lot more going on here than meets the eye. He would present his, and the fact that they've made it like, well, I'm the only person that can go and find out what this mystery is. Are you kidding me? Picard knows, and he's just wandering around like he's one guy. I mean, there's so much to uncover here. I would love to know, we're gonna find what? I mean, I just, again, I cannot buy it, because Data was a machine. Yes, he was a Sung android, but he was a machine, and Picard was interested watching the evolution of a new form of life, which I agree. But I don't think Picard loved Data like a brother. I think Picard was more interested to watch new life and new civilizations. Well, as Picard said, there it sits. He watched Data evolve, but ultimately Data was only ever just a machine. And I think that Picard did not have the attachment that he would have to, say, Riker. And this idea that Soji and Dahj are Data's children is something that, while interesting, that speaks to there's a lot more going on here. Who created them? I mean, Bruce Maddox created them. What? I mean, why did he disappear? If Bruce Maddox, he just disappeared. You would think that that's when Picard starts. When Picard went to Okinawa and talked to Jurati for the first time, I would have thought, I'm going to start making some calls, because there's clearly something going on here that we don't know about. But no, Picard's like, well, I'm going to go help you find. I mean, Romulan agents were on Earth. Black Ops teams came into his house. I mean, it's like, no, we're going to go ourselves. We're going to find out what's going on. What, you think that Starfleet is not going to be curious about the fact that, well, they don't appear. They're not going to believe that Picard says, well, when Dahj was killed, I'm telling you, a Romulan Black Ops team showed up. There is something going on here. Like that would happen in every other Star Trek episode. But the fact that they didn't deal with any of that, I understand your connection to Data, and maybe that would get him to go. But I don't believe, after everything that Picard saw and has learned, that he would just go off on his own. Well, let's just, you and I, find out what's going on, when clearly there's something much bigger going on. And the fact that they're all just going on their own, and that some Starfleet admiral says, fuck you to Picard, I just don't believe any of it. Again, you're taking the character of Picard and you're turning him into something that is convenient for the plot that you've cooked up, but doesn't make me, as a longtime and astute Star Trek viewer, believe in the story that you're telling. I don't believe it. Because everyone has to act dumb and treat Picard like an idiot for the story to work. So while I agree with what you're saying about Data, they haven't even explained what, in fact, Dahj and Soji are. I mean, Picard there was never a scene where they rescue Maddox where Picard goes in and like, tell us what's up. Nope, we're just going to conveniently have Jurati murder him. Because why? Because the writers just decided to do that. Who acts like that? No sane, normal person, when they're off on this, even if, especially, none of that makes any sense at all. I know that synths could ruin the whole galaxy is imperiled, But why am I going to kill Bruce Maddox? It's not like he's going to be making any new synths in the condition he's in. Why doesn't he offer some illumination into the situation we find ourselves? And the reason I can't go into it is because I don't buy any of that. I just don't. I don't believe in it. I don't believe that in the Star Trek universe anybody would be acting the way that they're acting, because the way that they're acting makes no sense. But anyway, your last point. 3, a crew of disappointed idealists. I have to give credit to a Scotsman whose moniker is Vroom Vroom Spork for this point. He points out that Star Trek Picard's cast embody a quote from George Carlin: "Inside every cynic is a disappointed idealist." This crew, literally every single one of them, is a disappointed idealist. Rios was a model Starfleet officer who revered his captain until a traumatic, disillusioning event. Rafi devoted her considerable talents to rescuing refugees before Picard and the Federation let her down. She literally says of herself when Agnes calls her a good, "I'm more like the wreckage of a good person." Agnes aspired to help create new life before the synth attack and O's brainfuck. Soji was rehabilitating former drones before her lover betrayed and tried to murder her. We even saw it in Picard at the start of the show, ranting about a Starfleet that is no longer Starfleet. In Soji, Picard finds a way to hope again, and he's slowly bringing his crew back from the brink. That's where his story is going. The question that drew Sir Patrick Stewart back to this character is, where does Picard fit in a galaxy that no longer lives up to his ideals? Because that's the question so many of us are asking ourselves today, which is the problem. Again, the problem. I don't believe Picard would ever allow himself to get to the point that he's in Star Trek Picard. It's completely out of his character. It's out of everything we know. So what's another thing I like about Picard? That it's a story about hope when all seems lost. As Vroom Vroom says, I'm enjoying all these disappointed idealists getting the opportunity to become idealists again, because it's what I want for myself and others. And that is what the Trek I grew up with was all about, seeing a bright future beyond our flawed present. I'll stop here. That's just 3 reasons. If you wish, I'll write more. I haven't mentioned Star Trek Picard's Romulans and Borg presenting an analogy for the dispossessed of our own world, or the fact Picard is giving us some of the best acting and character moments in Trek, or even more superficial reasons like finding Issa Briones, who plays Daj and Soji, easy on the eyes, sue me. Anyway, Rob, as always, thanks for any time you give to me, a stranger, and for being secure enough in your own views to engage with mine. Cheers. Well, I would like to point out, I just want to say, great letter, very thoughtful letter, Sean, and I don't disagree with you. I think the reasons why you like Picard are fair and balanced and nuanced. I think what you're saying is good. I mean, I think it's great, and I think it's great that you are liking the show for those reasons. I unfortunately can't go along because I think that everything that has happened in the show is it's all contrived. And I know all writing and all stories are contrived, but I just don't believe in it. As a longtime Star Trek viewer, they have not made me believe in anything, which is why I think that I didn't like Force Awakens so much, is the situation they presented to me. I don't believe it. I don't believe in Star Killer Base. I don't believe in the kind of what it's supposed to do. It just, none of it. And the Star Trek Picard show, I don't believe the way Starfleet admirals talk to Picard. I don't believe the way anybody else talks to Picard. I don't believe that huge setbacks would cause Starfleet officers. Look, you think Starfleet officers haven't seen people die? The fact I'm supposed to believe that Rios is so traumatized by seeing somebody kill themselves. Captain Terrell killed himself in Star Trek 2, but everybody wasn't so traumatized that they couldn't do their jobs anymore. I mean, past Star Trek is the people that work for the Federation are tough motherfuckers. They know what's up. They don't cower in the face of adversity. Cestus 3 was wiped off the face of Cestus 3, the outpost. And what do? They saddle up and they chase the Gorn starship through space. They're not scared. They're not traumatized. I don't believe these people know they're used to dealing. These are seasoned veterans that are on the front lines of space. They're trained to take care of these things. Look, I understand on Earth that a lot of people can become disillusioned now. I get it. But Star Trek characters are by definition not of Earth of today. They're different. They're better than us. That's what Star Trek is all about. Star Trek is about elite human beings doing elite things, being able to deal with big problems. And I just don't believe that the Star Trek Picard that they've given us, it's so of today. And a lot of it, despite the fact that it's gobbledygook and nonsensical and it doesn't make sense, I would have done 10 episodes about that Borg cube. I think if you wanted to do a really interesting Star Trek story, you could do a whole mini-series about what the ramifications of acquiring that Borg cube mean. What does it mean to the drones? What does it mean to the Federation? What did it mean to the Romulans? All of this stuff. I still don't even know what Soji was doing on that Borg cube. How'd she get that job in the first place? Who are her employers? Who sent her there? I don't know. I don't know anything, and my objections to it, I understand why you like it, and those are sound objections. And maybe it's because I've been watching Star Trek for the better part of my life that I have questions that aren't answered, and it seems that they've done something really convenient, and they've just made it the way they've made it to tell their story, and I don't believe their story. Ultimately, I don't believe their story. I think everyone's acting out of character. I don't believe anything that anybody has done on this show. They haven't made me believe any of it. And that's my biggest problem. I don't believe. And like Fox Mulder, I want to. I want to believe. Great letter, though. Thanks for writing in. The King Waspinator writes in. The King Waspinator. It's time for us to all face the facts. Stupid movies seem to do better than smart movies. I'm not sitting on a high horse casting glass stones here. I like my dumb entertainment as much as anyone else. But I had an epiphany of sorts. If you want success in this biz, if you want the right people to listen, you got to bring that A-grade stupidity. So I'd like to talk about a little project I have in mind called Star Trek versus Transformers. Wasn't this already a IDW comic series? Carrying off the future success of Godzilla vs. King Kong, we put subliminal messages in energy drink commercials to stimulate Michael Bay's creative juices, priming him to direct the one movie that can save both Paramount's sagging film franchises in one blow. Think about it. Star Trek Picard and Discovery Season 2 have both been about the threat of emerging AI sentience and an ancient apocalyptic world-destroying threat that will come to pass because of it. Well, what's the next logical step beyond artificial intelligence? Transformers. What would be the logical ancient world destroying the galactic menace? The world galactic menace. What would be the logical ancient world destroying galactic menace? Unicron. Yep, Michael Burnham will team up with Rodimus Prime, who has Spock's disembodied time brain, to do battle with Unicron, who turns out to have been the creator of the Borg in a final showdown between good and evil, forever transforming the final frontier. Ahem. Semi-seriously, they've done equally weird stuff in comics like having the TNG crew meet the X-Men, which would be an inter-studio rights nightmare to do in movie form, but Paramount does own Transformers, so why not find out if the USS Discovery is more than meets the eye? We live in ridiculous times when it comes to popular entertainment, so why not do something wonky every now and then? It couldn't be any worse than what we've been getting from either Trek or Transformers in the last decade. I don't know, man. Bumblebee is a legit, straight-up good movie, I would say. And I did like the first Transformers, and I liked the whole battle for Chicago and Dark of the Moon. But, hey, you know what? I would watch that. Unicron, that's where the Borg came from. If Unicron, I mean, they do say V'ger is from a machine planet. Why shouldn't that be Unicron? I'll buy it. Or why not? Sure. Thanks for the letter, Waspinator. You always crack me up. That was no exception. This is from Guy Broyles. Hello, Rob. I've been a fan of yours since your first days with John Schnepp. Now, I'm not trying to tell you how to run your channel. You're far better at communicating to the masses than I could ever be. I'm just an electrician, a blue-collar job that doesn't require near the articulation that keeping public interest requires. So I think your gentle nature is one of the biggest things that sets you apart from other YouTubers. Just a suggestion, but maybe try and refrain from using aggressive language in statements. I know that seems somewhat random. I'll try and explain. The other day, I was watching your show, and you were talking about a phrase that a film or show was trying to put out there and hope it catches on and how ridiculous it is. Quibby. Now I've heard that it's been defined as a Quibi is an increment that is of time that's 10 minutes or less is a Quibi. You said, how about I punch you in the face? It's so off-putting. I did say that. It's so off-putting to hear things like that come from you. I know that no one is perfect and everyone gets excited and says things they don't mean in a literal sense. But you're the exception, the diamond in the rough. I watch your older shows, and I was watching a year-old episode today when Campia texted you about maybe pulling back on the Star Trek bashing. The speech you gave about how you had been wrong, how you weren't in any position to lessen someone's joy they may be getting from new Star Trek, how lucky you are in the grand scheme of things. I can't tell you how many times you've said those kinds of things, and it has literally changed my whole mindset. So it isn't an exaggeration when I say that watching your show has made me a better person a little at a time. I know that might sound cheesy, but it's 100% true. There's enough negative content on the internet continue to prove it's beneath you. By the way, I live in East Tennessee. I can't remember you reading a letter from a Southern fan. Maybe you have, but if not, it'd be cool if I was the first. Either way, thanks for all the knowledge, good old entertainment, positive content, and most of all, helping me see things in a different, more optimistic way. Well, Guy, first of all, what a great letter. Thank you for writing in. And I'm going to tell you something about what you said. This is true, by the way. I felt bad about saying I want to punch them in the face. I did. I felt bad about it. And it was, even when I said it, I think it was uncharacteristic of me to say. Because, look, I wouldn't punch anyone in the face. I've been punched in the face. When I was in Australia, I was attacked. I was jumped by 4 guys. I was on the phone talking to my wife. I was coming back from a bar. I had helped Jorah, this guy who worked for us on the team. Jorah got a little too tipsy at this party. It was a crew party, cast and crew party, and I made sure that he got into a cab that was going to take him home. And I was only like 4 blocks away. I was on William Street looking up toward the famous Coca-Cola sign in Sydney. I was literally just walking up the street, talking to my wife at the time on the phone, and 4 guys. The footy was over. It was late. It was like 3 a.m. But, you know, Australians stay out, the bars close at like 4. And I didn't think of it, anything of it. And 4 guys immediately started. They were drunk. They just started beating the hell out of me. They were clockwork oranging me. They punched me in the face. I was kicked in the face. You know, I went down, and I had 3 cracked ribs, and my nose was, I don't know if it's broken, but let's just say it never looked the same after that. It was crooked. I have a scar on my right here because of it. So I know what it's like. Oh, by the way, if you ever get jumped like that, you have to get up, no matter how much it hurts you. I mean, I'm a pretty big guy, and I've been in fights before, so you've got to get up, and you have to protect your face, no matter what. And I did that, and then I got very loud. I literally made them run off because I was so loud. I didn't know how messed up I was. When I walked into my apartment that had a concierge desk, they'd seen us come in wrecked all the time. You know, we'd partied a lot in Sydney, and I came in and I didn't realize that blood was just literally pouring out of my nose. It was a mess. But I did feel bad when I said punch him in the face. So what you're saying is absolutely correct. And I shouldn't have said that. And I will endeavor not to say things like that again. I mean, I try not to make it personal. Sometimes I do, and I apologize for that. But I very much appreciate the sentiment, Guy, and you're correct, sir. I was wrong. And by the way, I went to Tennessee in 2018 for the first time, and what a great state. I was in Nashville, outside of Nashville too, and wow, it's beautiful. What great country you're from, sir. And thank you for writing this letter in. I appreciate that, and I will not use you. That language is definitely unbecoming, and I apologize. This comes from Luke Reichelt. Reichelt, I think it's Reichelt. Reichelt. Sorry for messing up your name. Hi, Rob. Just want to say a huge thanks for what you do. Thanks for reading my letter on air the other day. I'm the Australian who threatened Tom Hanks. I've sent my custom Bjork Funko Pop image to your gallery for consideration, as you suggested. You posted the link to my pop vinyl video, and this means the world to me. Cheers. Did you find the Game of Thrones porn hidden in the video game? Hidden in the video? No, I didn't. I just wanted to let you know I have a severe anxiety disorder. This self-quarantine period is no problem for me. To have yourself and your audience watch my video meant a lot. I've started working on the sci-fi pop vinyl video. I'll send it to you, dude. My dad gave me a gimbal for my phone. It's a game changer. It is, isn't it? I've also written a whole new set of ludicrous threats to throw at you. Stay well, dude. Love you, Luke. Well, Luke, I appreciate that, and thanks for continuing to send letters to the channel. By the way, I'm not picking these letters because they're nice to me. These literally are. I'm reading them the letter that they came in. People have been sending me super chats. Let me get to those. Wow, there's been a lot. I've been missing a lot. I want to make sure I don't. Okay, Stubble McShave says, the problem with killing off Snoke was that they eliminated the big bad in the middle of the story and didn't set up Kylo enough to take the mantle of the new big bad. Hence, the Band-Aid called Palpatine to take that role of the big bad. Stubble, I couldn't agree with you more. I absolutely believe that. I think you're 100% right about that. And that was hugely problematic. You know, and when you think about it, Kylo Ren was a victim. I mean, he was led down the primrose path. I mean, he was corrupted by the dark side of the Force. But I think that, you know, by bringing back Palpatine, which, let's face it, that was a Hail Mary pass. It didn't really work because, again, everything they did around Palpatine was kind of unbelievable. I didn't believe it. That's my problem with a lot of J.J. Abrams filmmaking, is I just don't believe any of it. And I think you're absolutely right about that. I think that's a very astute observation. Chairman Mao sends in a tip and says, picked up the following films from Shout Factory's select sale. Downfall, because why not? The underrated but great road movie Midnight Run. Great movie. To Live and Die in L.A., which I have not given enough love to. And The Hills Run Red. Well, I guess you bought that in advance. You pre-ordered The Hills Run Red, which I thank you for. I think anybody who... Look, The Hills Run Red, you know, I'm very proud of what we did with that movie. The fact that it went from being a $350,000 independent movie to being a movie that Warner Brothers made with Joel Silver and Dark Castle Entertainment, I was very happy that it happened. I will say this, you are going to love the Hills Run Red Blu-ray. It is packed. It'll probably end up having 4 hours of special features, and that's pretty good for an 84-minute movie. But those are great titles, by the way. Downfall is great. Midnight Run is so great. You know, Midnight Run... What a terrific, terrific film. My God, do I love that movie. And congratulations for getting all those. What a great haul you have there. 200 Watt Studio sent in a super chat and says, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on the following John Frankenheimer films: Black Sunday, The Train, Manchurian Candidate, and 7 Days in May. 200 Watt Studio, I love John Frankenheimer. I even love Reindeer Games. I'm a huge John Frankenheimer fan. I love Prophecy, the monster movie. Those movies that you cited, Black Sunday, by the way, is a great movie. That was also written by Thomas Harris, who wrote Red Dragon, Silence of the Lambs, and Hannibal. The man who created Hannibal Lecter wrote Black Sunday. That was his first novel, also adapted. Love Black Sunday. For those of you who don't know, Black Sunday is about a terrorist plot to blow up the Super Bowl. It's got an all-star cast. It's a powerhouse 70s conspiracy thriller movie. I love Black Sunday. I think it's great. Now, that's from the 70s, but the other movies you mentioned, The Train, Manchurian Candidate, 7 Days in May, I will add John Frankenheimer's black and white 60s movies. The Train, Manchurian Candidate, 7 Days in May. I would add Birdman of Alcatraz, and Seconds, which is one of my favorite science fiction movies ever, are all fantastic. I love them all. The Manchurian Candidate is one of my favorite political thrillers ever made. These films are incredible, and I'm glad you brought them all up. I don't know if Black Sunday's on Blu-ray. Do I have Black Sunday on Blu-ray? I don't know. But I have the others. I have this Train, Manchurian Candidate, and 7 Days in May. Boy, I love those films. 7 Days in May is about a coup, an attempted coup of the U.S. government. Terrific, terrific movie. I love them all. So that's a great list you're giving me. Simon sends in a super chat and says, just got off work and I caught wind about Henry Cavill, Amy Adams, Warner Brothers, and Man of Steel situation. Here is my reaction. F Warner Brothers for the way Cavill was handled, and I hope Warner Brothers goes out of business. Well, please don't hope that because Warner Brothers employs a lot of people and they've got Wonder Woman 84 coming out and I want to see it. No, look, I think here's the thinking of, we were talking about this on the John Campy show today. I would love to see another Superman movie with Henry Cavill. Henry Cavill never got a chance to actually be in a Superman movie where he could just be Superman. Man of Steel was about his origin. Batman v Superman had the gimmick of Batman and Wonder Woman and all of that. It wasn't really a Superman movie per se. It had all this other stuff going on. And then, of course, Justice League, which rounds out the Henry Cavill Superman trilogy, didn't do what we'd hoped. And I loved Henry Cavill as the Man of Steel. I would love to have seen a Henry Cavill Superman movie. Just him Superman straight up. And I think you're right. It's a bummer that we're not going to see it. Amy Adams saying the studio is going in a different direction. I think that's a big mistake. I guess the studio figures, well, there were 3 Henry Cavill Superman movies, and they're looking at numbers. The numbers never, even Man of Steel did not do what they wanted it to do or what they hoped it would do. So I get it. It's a bummer. Magic K sends in a tip and says, game recommendation, Animal Crossing New Horizon on Nintendo Switch comes out this Friday. The game is about you going to a desert island and you can design your own island. I know that Ann Campia, John Campia's wife, I thought that came out today. Maybe it comes out Friday, but John Campia said it came out today. And Ann Campia is very excited about it. You know what? I don't know anything about this game, but if you can design your own island, I love shit like that. I would definitely want to play that. I don't have a Nintendo Switch, however. Anyway, Anthony Gonzalez says, what's this questioning of late if there is money, Starfleet, or the Federation? Think about every episode Bashir and O'Brien went to the holosuite. Quark didn't let them in for free. Yeah, we were talking about how there's different... I mean, the whole idea of money, and Michael Chabon, it was in that article I was reading, Michael Chabon talks about whether or not that there's money in the Federation and all that stuff. I mean, there's got to be some kind of currency because you are dealing with people outside the Federation. I mean, Quark's bar isn't free. I would think that currency, again, if I was in charge of Star Trek and I was going to just go after this head on, that Starfleet officers, depending on where they're stationed, would be issued whatever the currency is. Like if you're on Deep Space Nine, you would have to have currency to deal with people. Everything you might want, whether it's food or whatever you need, is taken care of for you. But there is economic systems all around the galaxy, and I'm sure that you would be given, whether if it's not part of your pay, you would have to be issued currency to deal with where you're at. I mean, with Deep Space Nine, you if you want to buy things or whatever, you need currency, so it would be issued to you. They've never really gotten into that, but I wish they would. Simon sends in a super chat and says, I said that because Warner Brothers could have a better way of handling the situation with Henry Cavill by being upfront, by saying, we have decided to start over with a new portrayal. Honesty works. Well, here's the thing. Simon. The studios are, I know this might be blasphemous, but the studios are under no obligation to tell the look, you don't hear about what other businesses are doing. They don't tell you in advance. I mean, if somebody's making a new product, you might hear about when the product's being in development or whatever, but the studio has no obligation to tell the audience anything. They made 3 Henry Cavill movies, just like the way they made 3 Henry Cavill as Superman movies. Were they entirely satisfying? No. Would I have liked to see more? Yes. But they're trying to do something new, just like they're doing something new with Ben Affleck's Batman. It makes sense that in that particular iteration that we're not going to see those characters again. I get it. But you can't be mad at them. But I just don't think studios are under any obligation. It's hard because in this day and age, I get it, man. I've been a fan my whole life, and I'm like, I want to know. They should tell us what's happening. Is Spock? I remember when it was announced Spock was going to die in Star Trek 2. I was like, what? But I just don't think that studios are necessarily at all obligated. First of all, they don't know. They don't know what they're going to do. And when they do know, they tell us. When they know that what's going on. I think that as far as Henry Cavill's Superman is concerned, he never lived up to what the studio wanted, and I think that that kind of bums them out, and that's why they're going to go in a new direction. If Man of Steel had made $1 billion instead of 650 or million or whatever, it might have been a different story, but it didn't. And Batman v Superman, look, they had unrealistic expectations. It still did well, but it cost like $450 million. So ultimately, it was seen as a disappointment. They thought that movie was going to make 1.5, I'm sure, 1.5 billion, and it didn't, which is a bummer. But I don't think that the studio is obligated to us. I mean, I don't necessarily think so. Claudius sends in a tip and says, "You got sirens for a welcome. There's bloodstain for your pain. Lo Watu, great show. Warning, Last Jedi post. In my humble opinion, Luke Skywalker and Admiral Picard were treated in the same way. Instead of heroes at their best, we got despair and resignation. Why?" Well, that's a good question. I think, they said it in Star Trek too. As a matter of cosmic history, it is always easier to destroy than to create. I think that is a quick way to start your story. Let's just deconstruct your heroes. It's the quick way to come up with some kind of an interesting story. And I think in the case of Jean-Luc Picard and Luke, I think that was a mistake. Ultimately, I think it was a mistake. And it was a mistake because if you're going to bring a character, if you're going to give them a downfall, I would like to see that downfall. To go from, the end of Star Trek, which was all good things, and I understand Nemesis was not great. Captain Picard said that's not where Patrick Stewart said that was not where we should leave Captain Picard. He was able to come back. Make no mistake, he didn't want to come back and play Picard. He got paid. Captain Picard's like, hey, or Stewart's like, I can be the star of a show. Let's talk about Brexit, and let's talk about Trump's presidency. Let's talk about all these things and make it relevant. Well, and let's do what they did to Professor X in Logan. And I get it. I get that's where all of this stuff came from. The problem is, while it's interesting to me, from the inside out, I don't believe that the Star Trek universe would be where it is now. Just like I don't believe that the Star Wars universe after Return of the Jedi would allow the First Order to rise up and become the threat it has become. Because, the Rebellion defeated the Empire. Why would the Rebellion not do the same thing to the First Order? How is the First Order? I don't even believe that the First Order could have built Starkiller Base. I don't believe it. At least with the Death Star in the first Star Wars, you don't know enough. You buy into that. I buy into the Death Star. But even the prequels established that the Death Star took decades to build. Well, who's going to allow Starkiller Base? How many people? How many independent this is the kind of stuff I ask myself. Where did they get the material to build Starkiller Base? Who supplied it all? I believe if there's a galactic empire could build whatever the fuck they want. But with Starkiller Base in striking distance within, that's not going to get out? How many people did they need to build Starkiller Base on an entire planetoid? It'd be one of the biggest construction projects ever. And it would probably have taken all 30 years from the time Return of the Jedi came out to when Force Awakens came out. I don't buy it. But yeah. Claudius sends in another tip and says, Jedi Masters don't cower any more than Starfleet captains. We don't believe, nor do we accept. I imagine that the Russo brothers would have shown us a badass yet conflicted Master Skywalker. And yes, you started quoting Duran Duran, Rob. Interesting. Sean Pullen, whose letters, I always quote Duran Duran. You know why? Because you can. Out on the tar plains, the glides are moving. And the sun drips down, very shadowy lined. The front of your dress all shadowy lined. And the droning engine throbs in time with your beating heart. Sing Blue Silver. Sean Pullen, who sent me that great letter at the top when I started reading letters, sends in a super chat and says, great answers. Wish I could have heard him on that whiskey you mentioned yesterday, but being half a continent away, your channel is a close consolation. Well, I thank you for that, Sean, and thank you for supporting the channel. And most of all, Please write more letters. That was a great letter you wrote. Clinging Mars sent in a super chat and said, best acting? Did he watch Cube storyline? I don't know what that means. The Cube storyline. The Cube storyline of like the movie Cube? The Borg Cube storyline. Are you talking about best acting? I think what Clinging Mars is saying to Sean, the best acting, did he watch the Cube storyline, the Borg Cube? Yes, I would say that the acting on Star Trek Picard also has not been, shall we say, the best. I like Santiago, I like the Rios, but yeah, it's been very mixed bag. Star Wars Rocks sends in a tip, and he says, oh, excuse me. He says, hi, Rob. Have you ever watched and or heard of a cartoon called Miraculous Tales of Ladybug and Chat Noir? If you haven't, then give it a try. You might even end up liking it. You can find all 3 seasons on Netflix. The second and third seasons were both 26 episodes. I believe this is a French show, and I've been asked this like 20 times. People keep asking me about the show, and I've been remiss. I have dropped the ball. I have let you down because I have not watched this show. But I've heard about it. People keep telling me about it, and people keep saying it's good. And anything that's called The Tales of Ladybug and Chat Noir sounds like it's right up my alley. I have not. I got to watch it. 200 Watt Studio sends in a super chat and says, I love Frankenheimer's live TV work too. The comedian, etc. Also, his commentaries are always informative. I agree. I'm a huge Frankenheimer fan. And, you know, he kind of fell off. By the way, John Frankenheimer directed The French Connection too, where Popeye Doyle, Gene Hackman, went to France. And it's not a terrible sequel. It's actually pretty interesting. I know that Frankenheimer, you know, he kind of went off the rails. I know that he had substance abuse issues and all that, but it was great to see him come back and do HBO miniseries and things, and he started to make movies again. You know, he took over on Island of Dr. Moreau. Maybe that wasn't such a good thing to do, but he also, like I said, with Ben Affleck, I like reindeer games. I'm a Frankenheimer fan. And then Star Wars Rock sent in another tip that was part of the same conversation. The second and third seasons were both 26 episodes, so it was split into 2 parts for Netflix. As of this moment, though, season 3 is only on Netflix in the U.S. and not Europe. And oh, by the way, Rob, the H in Chat Noir is a silent H, so it's Cat Noir. Oh, wow. Okay, I get it. I see what they're going for there. I get it. Anthony Gonzalez sends in a tip and says, I must have been 13 or 14 when Duran Duran's wedding album came out. That has, of course, Come Undone on it, and has Ordinary World, too. It was my first album of theirs I bought. I loved it, and from there, dove into their earlier albums. What did you think of the album? I love the wedding album. I think it's great. And look, I think Come Undone, Ordinary World's a great song. No doubt, it's a great song. But Come Undone is one of my favorite Duran Duran songs. I really love. You know, I've been a huge fan of what they've done over the last 20 years as well. I'm a Duranie. Elizabeth and I went and saw Duran Duran. We went on the Paper Gods tour, their last album, Paper Gods. It's almost like 5 years old now. It's been like 5 years old since 5 years old. It's been like 5 years since they put out a new album. But like, I really liked Red Carpet Massacre. I did. You know, I liked Astronaut, their album Astronaut. And their last 2 albums I thought were really good. You know, Paper Dolls is good. They've been collaborating on a lot of their albums. They've been collaborating. I mean, they collaborated with Justin Timberlake and Timbaland. I mean, they've been doing some good work. I'm a huge Duran Duran fan all the way back. I mean, they were a sci-fi band. You know, in '82 when Rio came out, that was great. That was when I was big into vinyl and 12 inches. I mean, that's when I really started to get into music. '82 was a big year because it was like, I was really heavily into Prince then too. There was so much good stuff coming out. But, you know, Rio in 1999, those, I can't tell you how many times I've listened to those records. But yeah, even like when Warren Cucurlo was in the band too. I mean, I think he either wrote Ordinary World or Come Undone, you know, after Duran Duran has a really interesting history. When John Taylor left and joined the Power Station, and then you had Nick Rhodes and Roger Taylor and Simon Le Bon founded Arcadia. I love Arcadia. They only put out 1 album, So Red the Rose, but I'm a huge fan. I want to say had to have been close 2011 or 2012. They put out a 3-disc remaster of Arcadia, the So Red the Rose album. It's so good. It has all the remixes on it, like the Election Day remix with Grace Jones. And boy, I'm really going off topic. But anyway, I'm glad you dug it, Anthony Gonzalez. Anybody who wants to talk Duran Duran, I'm in. Happy Console Gamer sends in a super chat and says, "Hey Rob, I watched To Live and Die in LA the other night and it was okay." What? Why do you love it so much, and why was it received so well at the time? Because it's fucking awesome. Well, I think, first of all, it's based on a book by Gerald Pedovich, and I think that you have to remember at the time, I think To Live and Die in LA came out in October of 1985, and it was, at the time, Miami Vice. I think it epitomizes the 80s vibe. And look, I understand when you watch To Live and Die in LA, it's not like the overblown action that we get now in the Bad Boys movies or The Rock or whatever. I mean, it was fairly realistic and down to earth. But what I just love the feel of the movie. I love the way it captures LA, the seedy, grungy, dusty shithole side of LA. I mean, basically, there's the sprawling industrial wasteland that surrounds Los Angeles. I mean, I love everything about it, but mostly I love the central conflict between Willem Dafoe's Rick Masters, the counterfeiter, and Richard Chance, the character that William Peterson plays. And I love the fact that you have this cop, actually he's not a cop, he's a Secret Service agent, who is willing to bend the rules and do whatever it takes to bring down the man who killed his partner, Jimmy Hart. And John Pankow, his new partner, comes in and tries to do it by the book. And I find it as a story. I love the film. I love the attitude. I love the score. I love the way it's shot by Robbie Mueller. Everything about it. I mean, look at that opening credit sequence, the montage where they show counterfeiting happening. I love all of that. Everything about that movie, I just love. But I can understand, look, I've said this before, Happy Console Gamer. I would say, judging by your name, Happy Console Gamer, you're probably younger than me. I might be wrong. You're probably younger than me. So if you are younger than me, let's say you're 15 years younger than me. The cop thrillers and the things that you've seen are going to be different. I often say on the show, if you grew up in a world where Jurassic Park exists already, and you've seen photorealistic dinosaurs, it's really hard to go back and then watch movies like The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms or Valley of the Gwangi or any stop motion stuff, Ray Harryhausen stuff. Even his last movie, Clash of the Titans, you can tell it's from a different era. And so it's really hard to go back and watch those movies and go, oh man, that movie's so great. It's tough. It's really hard. I've often said on the show, my theory, it's not a Rob axiom, but I have a theory that every 20 years, pop culture sort of falls into, once pop culture is 20 years old. Now, this isn't always the case, but 20, and maybe on the outside 30 years, that pop culture just falls away. Pop culture has to be of the generation it's from, really. Now, as I've grown older, there's things that I love. I love To Live and Die when in LA when it came out. But that movie's 35 years old. And entertainment has moved on. Editorial techniques have moved on. I mean, MTV was less than 5 years old when To Live and Die in LA, which did make there's a lot of great editing. Bud Carr edited To Live and Die. Bud Carr. Was it Bud Carr? I think Bud Carr. Am I thinking about the music supervisor? I think it was Bud Carr that edited To Live and Die in LA. But the editing in that movie is incredible. And yet, if you watch something that's more modern, it might even seem a little quaint. But that's why I really love that movie. The White Wolf sends in a super chat and says, "Hey Rob, what's your favorite Bond themes? My top 3 are Spy Who Loved Me, Moonraker, and You Only Live Twice. Love your show, by the way." Those are good ones. I have to say, I love a lot of the Bond themes. I think it'd be easier to say which Bond themes I don't like. I don't like Die Another Day by Madonna. I don't like Writings on the Wall by Sam Smith. I'm not going to comment on Billie Eilish's theme. I haven't lived with it enough and I haven't seen it in the movie. But I really like, From Russia with Love. From Russia with love, I fly to you. Much wiser since my goodbye. Anyway, I love Goldfinger. I won't sing that. I love Thunderball. You Only Have Twice as Good. You got to love Little Nancy Sinatra. On Her Majesty's Secret Service doesn't have a song. It's got an instrumental. It's got John Barry instrumental, which is awesome. But it has Louis Armstrong. We have all the time in the world. It's got that. Diamonds Are Forever is okay. Not my favorite. Love Live and Let Die. I love Man with Golden Gun. He has a powerful weapon. He charges 1,000,000 a shot. Spy Who Loved Me is great. Moonraker is great. For Your Eyes Only, Sheena Easton. That's a cool song. Octopussy, All Time High. Not one of my favorite Bond songs. And I was really hoping, how are you going to work Octopussy into a song lyric? View to a Kill, one of my least favorite Bond movies. Great Duran Duran song. Aha, as much as I wanted to love Aha, and I like Aha. I have a lot of Aha albums. Yes, they made more than just the Scoundrel Days and their first album. There's a lot of Aha albums. They continue to be big song makers to the rest of the world, not so much in America. Some Living Daylights is okay, I guess. License to Kill it never reaches the heights I wanted it to reach. I like Goldeneye, Tina Turner's Goldeneye. I really like Goldeneye. Tomorrow Never Dies is pretty good. The World Is Not Enough is pretty good. I love You Know My Name. Is it You Know My Name? The Chris Cornell song. I didn't love it at first, but I love it now. And I really like Skyfall. So there you go. There's my thoughts on that. Happy Console Gamer says, 46 here, Rob. Ooh, so you're not that much younger than me. Laugh out loud. I love Buckaroo Banzai and so many older films. I saw Raiders in 81 in the theater and all the original Star Wars films. All right, so I'm wrong. But I can understand, okay, so you grew up, you saw the classics. I made a wrong assessment about you, and I apologize. Crosstalk sends in a tip and says, the closest thing I listen to that's in the same universe of New Wave is Devo. But to me, they're more of a synth punk band. I agree. Tool's first release is what really got me into music. That and Metallica. I like Tool. Yeah. That's good. They're a good band. But I could see that. It was just hit me at the right time. I mean, my teenage years, my adolescence, what I thought was one of the things, like when I was a kid, because of Star Wars, all I listened to was movie soundtracks. And it wasn't until I had my paper route. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I had a paper route for a long time. Like for 2 years, I had a paper route. And I had 53 houses on my paper route. And it usually took me about 45 minutes to walk around my neighborhood and deliver papers. But the thing that got me when I did my paper route was I got a Walkman. And I always did my paper route with my Walkman on. And I started listening to more music, like the Stones. I went through a period where it was all Rolling Stones. It was the Doors, really. When I was 12, seeing Apocalypse Now, and I heard The End. I'm like, what is this? And I became a Doors fanatic. And then I was listening to Doors, the Stones, the Beatles, and Pink Floyd. That's all I listened to. And then I found other music. I got into like New Order and Depeche Mode and Duran Duran and all that stuff. Prince, Grace Jones. I mean, and then I got totally, soft cell. I was really into Brit pop and all that because it was like sci-fi music. So that's what I'd like Kiss when I was a kid, but I was never a metalhead. I liked hard rock. I love Zeppelin, but I never liked, I didn't get into hair bands. In the 80s, I didn't dig it. It seemed a little lowbrow to me. Twisted Sister, I'm like, come on, man, really? Dee Snider? But anyway. But Metallica is a great band. I think Metallica is a really, truly, Tool and Metallica are legit great bands. And so I approve of your choices. Simon sends in a super chat and says, I understand that studios can do what they want. The statement Warner Brothers gave in 2018 that they have a great relationship with Henry Cavill and a movie is not planned, they should have said we are parting ways. No, look, in this day and age, Simon, I'll have to tell you, I do agree with that. I think, you can't rely on a fan base and then not treat your fan base correctly. We live in a new world. The studios are out there doing social media, and I do think that they owe their fans, and everyone knows people are looking very closely at these comic book movies. if they expect us to turn up for opening weekend for their movies, whether it's Aquaman or Wonder Woman or Suicide Squad or Birds of Prey or whatever, they should cultivate that fan relationship. Because you know what people don't understand? I don't think it's understood, at least by the studio. It gives me no pleasure to not like Star Trek. Star Trek's one of my favorite things in the world. I am surrounded by Star Trek stuff. I worked on Star Trek things right above my head, actually. And I love Star Trek. It gives me no pleasure to not like these things. Just like I don't think anyone, any fan, we get excited for all of this. We want it to all be good. We all want it to all be great. Nobody likes when something sucks. We hate it, as a matter of fact, as people will know. And I don't understand why, clearly, I mean, the studios, by the way, how much play, they couldn't even afford. The studios don't have enough money to afford to pay for the publicity they get for these YouTube channel videos. I mean, it's free. Whether we hate something or not, we're still talking about it. People are like, well, he's talking about Star Trek. It's still an impression if you go by social media. And people are going to tell me, why does Burnett hate Picard so much? I watched it. I think it was that bad. And it's not, by the way. It's not that bad. It isn't that bad. If I could move myself out of the equation. But I think because of the legacy that it comes from, it makes it that bad. It makes it worse in my mind. But in Sean's mind, he's liking Picard. Now, here's a good point that I want to make. Sean wrote in letters, and he wrote a letter. He stepped up. I said, tell me why you like Picard. He told me why he liked Picard, and the reasons he likes Picard are very good reasons. I can't disagree with his reasons. But as a lifelong Star Trek fan, for me personally, his reasons for him are good. Now, I can't buy into that, but they're working for him. So I will never come and say, Sean, like I said, his reasoning is sound. He's not wrong. And if he likes the show, who am I to tell him, you're an idiot? If you like this, you're an idiot. He's not. It's working for him. And if anybody likes something, you cannot take that away from them. People like things in different ways. I can't expect people to bring 50 years of knowledge of Star Trek with them when they watch Picard or whatever. I can't expect people to. For 3 years of my life, I made documentaries where all I did all day for my living was talk about Star Trek The Next Generation. I interviewed the cast and crew over the space of 3 years. I then edited documentary pieces together. I mean, I thought about Star Trek The Next Generation. There is nobody on Earth other than Roger Lay Jr. who has spent that much time whether even my friends who've written books or whatever, but I spent 3 years every single day, even the weekends, thinking about Star Trek The Next Generation. So my experience and what I expect out of Star Trek might be admittedly a little too much. So I'm never going to take away from what Sean wants out of Star Trek. I would never do that. If it works for him, it works for him. Clearly, the people making Star Trek put this forward and said, this is what we think is great. And I would say I disagree with that. And for reasons, look, I don't hate Alex Kurtzman. I've never met Alex Kurtzman. I'm sure if we sat down and we could geek out over the same things, that we would probably get along. You know, I told that story about Ted Sullivan, who was a producer on Discovery. He didn't really know me. He didn't even know my opinions about Discovery, but he and I went back and forth on Twitter, and I was kind of a dick to him. And he was kind of a dick to me, though. And then I saw him at Comic-Con, and I saw him at a bar. I was at an event. I saw him at this bar. I walked right up to him, and I introduced myself, and we had a great conversation. And it was fine. And I think that's true of most people. I mean, like everybody else, we want these things to be good. I don't even know what I was saying. I'm so far in the weeds. What was my point? Anyway, yes, my point was, I think the studios should make us aware, the same way the studios put out earnings reports. I think that the studios should take their fans. We live in a world where fandom is driving all of this. Fandom are the people that show up. The fans show up to these opening weekends and make these movies huge. I think there should be more of a dialogue between the studios and the fan base, because they're invested. They are invested. And you're right. Simon, he sent another super chat and said, thank you. You are right. And with verisimilitude. Well, I got another letter to read here. that I'm going to end the show today with this letter because I think it's important, and it's from Willow Yang, our own Willow Yang. And as everyone knows, Willow Yang is studying to be a microbiologist. She's getting her PhD right now. So as far as anybody, this is about the coronavirus. And I'm going to read this letter because I thought it was great. Once again, Willow Yang remains my best friend I've never met. I have so much respect for Willow and everything that she does. But and before I read this letter, I want to remind everybody that at 8 o'clock tonight, Elizabeth and I will be back with our hour-long show, Elizaviews. Instead of Robservations, it's Elizaviews, whining about movies. And tonight, we are talking about Donnie Darko, Richard Kelly's 2001 Donnie Darko. We watched the theatrical version. I put that out on social media. Resoundingly, everyone told me to watch the theatrical version, which we did. And Elizabeth got to see it for the very first time. So that's what we're talking about. And we did forget to give, with Nail and I, our rating system. How many glasses of wine do we give this movie? 1 to 4. I give, with Nail and I, 4. I will have Elizabeth tell you what she does. But tonight, 8 o'clock, join us for Whining About Movies. Dear Rob, this is again from Willow Yang. I'll let her take it away. Dear Rob, I don't know if I should be sending this over, so do with this letter as you will. Everyone has the coronavirus pandemic on their minds, and I thought that I might write a letter addressing some common questions or issues that have been raised. Full disclaimer, I am not an expert in this field, although she is getting her PhD in microbiology. While I do feel relatively confident about the information that I'm providing below, I would still urge everyone who has questions to do some research on their own. Number 1, comparisons with the flu. The World Health Organization currently estimates the mortality rate of COVID-19 to be 3.4% worldwide. The numbers, of course, varies for different countries as well as different demographics, which I will address shortly onwards. The seasonal flu, by comparison, typically has a mortality rate of around 0.1%. Of course, the mortality rate of COVID-19 will likely change as we increase our screening, and most likely it will decrease as more and more cases are detected. Regardless, COVID-19 probably has at least a 10 times higher mortality rate than the flu. However, the virus hasn't killed as many people yet because there's only been, as of now, under 200,000 confirmed cases. If we end up having 50 million people infected in the United States, which is the typical number of people that get infected with the flu every year, we will be seeing far more deaths. Number 2, demographics and statistics around the world. The common belief is that the virus is only problematic to the older population, and that is true to some extent. Currently, there has been very few deaths from below the age of 40 demographic and virtually no cases of children under the age of 10 succumbing to the disease. However, we have to keep in mind that people with underlying conditions are also more susceptible. Some of the most common predictors of severe symptoms include people who suffer from cardiovascular disease, diabetes, chronic respiratory disease, hypertension, and cancer. The United States is famous or infamous for having large percentages of the population that are obese and suffer from many of the aforementioned underlying conditions. If this virus spreads to a significant percentage of the population, it is likely that we will see more younger people here having severe symptoms as well. As for statistics by country, it's a bit of a thorny situation when trying to compare data reported by different nations. The problem, I feel, is that the testing policies differ between nations, resulting in sample biases that make data comparisons difficult. For example, if one country limits testing to only people who meet a certain criteria, whereas another country is allowing anyone to get tested, then the data generated from the two countries will be quite different. Italy is currently reporting the highest mortality rate at about 7%, 2 times higher than the global death rate. There are many factors contributing to this, some of which include it's possible that the sampling is biased in the country, where they are primarily testing people with severe symptoms and missing a lot of the milder cases, i.e. the real mortality rate is actually lower. 2, the population is older, although Japan and Germany do also have an older demographic but considerably lower mortality rates. And 3, they got hit hard, where there was an enormous surge of cases in a short period of time, resulting in medical facilities being overwhelmed and many people not receiving the treatment they needed. One of the things I've heard about both Italy and Iran, in terms of coronavirus is the fact that they had large amounts of Chinese building infrastructure in both of those countries. 3, why we need to flatten the curve, which brings me to the point of why we must do everything right now to stymie the rates of infection in the country. There are some people who think that we should just let the virus do its thing, have everyone catch it, develop immunity towards it, and the outbreak be over and done with. Here's the problem. If everyone gets sick at once, our medical facilities will collapse. We simply do not have the capacity in this country, in any country, to be able to deal with this volume of patients. And that is on top of the regular number of people that get sick from other diseases every year. My parents have a friend in China whose father-in-law got sick with pneumonia right during the peak of the pandemic there, and he wasn't able to receive proper treatment and died because the hospitals were overwhelmed. We must take precautions to do everything to slow the progression of this virus in order to keep the number of people that are infected at an all-time low so that we don't overwhelm our healthcare facilities. I can guarantee that having 50 million people sick in a month will result in far greater mortality rates than having the same numbers of sick people over the course of a few years. 4, are masks useful? How do we flatten the curve? Social distancing is probably the most effective method of preventing infection, and I think that the governments around the world are doing the smart thing right now by shutting down large public gatherings. However, most people do need to still leave the house from time to time, and there are certainly precautions that you can take to minimize your risk of contracting the disease. I don't think I need to talk about hand washing and avoiding touching your face. Everyone probably knows that. I just want to talk about wearing surgical masks. The general consensus is that people who are sick should wear a mask to protect those around them because masks will help prevent you from projecting viral droplets onto other people. But seriously, if you're sick, please just stay at home. As for people that are healthy, it's a little contentious on whether surgical masks actually offer protection from viral diseases. I see it as a no harm, no foul situation. It wouldn't hurt if you wear one, just don't have a false sense of security and think that you're 100% protected. However, I do see a lot of people also wearing scarves around their faces, and seriously, that's not going to protect you against anything. A surgical mask has a filter that helps prevent some microbes, although probably not virions, from passing through. A scarf or any other piece of regular cloth has absolutely nothing. And if you don't go home and wash and disinfect your scarf, you're going to end up accumulating more germs than if you weren't wearing one. Please do a little research. 5. When will there be a vaccine? There's been news lately of many groups around the world developing candidate vaccines to this new coronavirus. While this will certainly be a great win for the scientific community, I do have to caution people who might think vaccines will soon be putting an end to this viral pandemic. Unlike movies, it generally takes 1 to 2 years for a candidate vaccine to undergo all the proper safety tests and trials in order for it to be approved and available to the general public. The last thing that drug companies or the FDA wants is to release a vaccine that comes with deadly side effects. Right now, researchers are hopeful that a vaccine will be available in 18 months from now. It would certainly be wonderful if we do get a vaccine in that amount of time. After all, we still haven't been able to find anything effective for numerous other viral diseases that have existed for decades. However, we do also need to understand that there likely won't be anything available to us in the immediate future. There has been a lot of confusion and conflicting opinions regarding COVID-19, and that is expected. This is a completely novel disease that just several months ago we had no idea even existed. It is entirely possible that the rate of infections will soon peak and that the pandemic largely resolved in a month or so. However, it is also possible that this can go on over the course of many months, and more than half the world's population ends up contracting the disease. The bottom line is, while we shouldn't be panicking, quite often panic just worsens the situation, we do also need to take this seriously, to make an effort and do our part in protecting ourselves and those around us. Crises bring out the best and worst in humanity. There are certainly people engaging in unsavory actions ranging from price gouging to scamming to spreading misinformation online to hacking websites. However, this is also an opportunity for people and countries to put aside their differences and work together to get through this. The sooner we can all get our act together, the sooner we will be able to overcome this. Stay safe and healthy, everyone. Willow. Once again, Willow Yang knocks it out of the park. Again, Willow Yang is a PhD candidate in microbiology, and I trust what she had to say. I mean, obviously, what she had to say was very clear-headed, good thinking, always good words from Willow. and I want to thank her for allowing me to read that on the air. Thank you again for sending that to me. It's nice to hear some clear-headed messaging for once. But to go out on a genre note, I'm going to read one more letter. This one from Jermaine K. Hello, Rob. Thanks for reading my previous letter on Robservations number 355. As a lifelong comic book fan, I've always appreciated the intellectual aspects of many heroes and villains just as much as the physical or fantastic. Batman being a skilled fighter is cool, but so are his detective skills. Seeing Spider-Man battle the Green Goblin is awesome, and so is his knowledge on how to create web shooters. That leads me to the main question of the letter. Would the world's greatest detective sell well in a live-action movie? The 1989 movie has always been my favorite live-action portrayal of Batman's world. Gotham, the Joker, Bruce Wayne, and Batman are all depicted incredibly well, in my opinion. There are a few glimpses of the world's greatest detective in it, too. Remember, Alfred Let's Go Shopping? When Batman finds the antidote to the Joker's toxin, that is sadly the last time he is shown to be a detective in a live-action setting. I doubt I'm the only fan that would love to see a Riddler-focused movie. Seeing Batman have to solve his puzzles like in the Arkham games could be amazing. Or maybe a Scarecrow-focused narrative as Batman has to outwit Crane on a psychological level. Both would be a dramatic switch from the angry buffoon Ben Affleck was tasked to play. Sorry, my disdain for Batman v Superman is coming out. What do you think, Rob? Would a detective-focused, crime-focused Batman movie work in live action? Well, Jermaine, I think absolutely it would. I think that element of Batman's character has been woefully misrepresented or underrepresented in movies. I think that's always a great element of the comics, and I think we're going to see more of that, I think, in the Pattinson Batman. But I think you're right. I'd love to see a little bit more sleuthing. That can always go well, and it's also, it brings an intellectual edge to Batman, I think, that we're lacking. And I'd like to see more of that. So, Jermaine, keep writing. And what a great letter that is. Thank you so very much. And I think that is fantastic. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this brings an end to Robservations episode number 365. Wow, you can spend an entire year now watching episodes of Robservations. Unbelievable. If you like these chats, I would appreciate it if you hit like, subscribe, hit the little button, and hit all so you can get notifications. I will be doing this as long as I can. I have to say, guys and girls and gentle beings and people from all over, it's hard if I don't have a subject. I mean, I do look for something to talk about every day, and I try and make these things evergreen because I want to be able to, I'm trying to stimulate myself as much as you guys with things that I can talk about. It's getting harder and harder because in terms of entertainment-related news, it really is all shutting down. But what does keep me going is letters. So if you're sequestered away, if you're socially distanced, I'd love getting letters from you guys. I love hearing what you have to say. And I'm going to start doing, just to sort of pass the time, I'm going to start making Robservatory videos off the shelf of the Robservatory, where I'm just going to, make quick 10-minute videos that I'm just going to make and talk about things that I have here, collectibles or books or movies or whatever. And if you'd like to see me riff on anything like that, please do. Please send it in. Happy to do so. And of course, Elizabeth and I are going to be doing Whining About Movies on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. As I said, tonight is Donnie Darko, the director's cut. Not the director's cut, the theatrical version. I'm sorry, I said director's cut. No, the theatrical version. And then Friday, we will be back with another movie. It's been fun. And by the way, I very much want to thank all of you. Elizabeth was nervous about doing this. I dragged her into doing this. Obviously, her thing is not... Look, I've been speaking at conventions and doing public speaking since I was a teenager, so it's not something that's hard for me to do, but not everybody can just turn on a camera and start talking, and I sort of threw her into the deep end, and you all have been very kind, and it's been a very positive experience for her and for the both of us. It's been fun, so thank you all for that. I very much appreciate that. And that brings me to an end of this chat. And again, thanks for all the support. Thanks for all the letters. Thanks for all the super chats and the tips. It keeps us going. I'm constantly wanting to upgrade things and do more stuff for the channel, which has been an ongoing evolution, obviously, since I moved into the Robservatory finally here. So I want to thank you for that. And to end this chat, as I always say, remember, Every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. All you have to do is listen. And with that, I say, this will be the end of Robservations, episode 365. And as I always say, have a better day.